Okay, members of council, this meeting is now resumed. For the benefit of those who are connected to the internet, the city clerk has posted all of the agenda materials for today's meeting at toronto.ca/council. Before we begin, I understand that Councillor Karygiannis would just like to make an announcement.
Madam Chair, in view of my colleague Glenn de Beermaker, whose ward this was in, and he's not in the... Oh, there he is. I'll wait until he gets in the chamber.
Yeah, I remember.
Madam Chair, Mr. Mayor, colleagues, last night we had an incident. Glenn and I were chatting on the phone, and he told me that at 60 Terrence Drive, there was, at a school, there was something written was very vulgar. We managed to, with the help of the staff, to have it graffiti removed. The graffiti was very negatory towards the Muslim community, and I want to thank the staff of transportation as well as the staff of solid waste, two individuals, Edison Alexander and Johnny Wanu, that went above and the call above the call of duty, and they made sure that this morning before the students came in, this was cleared and the graffiti was gone. The graffiti was very graphic. It was towards one particular religion, the Muslim religion, and this is something that we need to condemn and make sure that we never, never, never absolutely allow anybody to get away. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Glenn to say his words, and I want to thank him for involving me as the newcomers advocate, and we were able to work things out. Again, thanks to the staff and the two individuals.
Thank you. Councillor de Beermaker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Through you, I wanted to stand on a point of privilege as well to convey my solidarity and best wishes with the students and the families and the parents who go to the Wally Al-Asra School. It's a school that has about 250 kids going to it. And on a bike ride home last night, on a holiday Monday evening, we came across some very ugly, graphic, racist, hateful comments spray painted on the side of the school wall. I had obviously a mix of emotions. One, shock. I've lived in Scarborough my entire life and never seen anything like that before. Anger that somebody could be so vile and so hateful and do something in front that they know where school children will be attending. And also, I have to say, a little bit embarrassed. Embarrassed because it happened in my ward close to just down the street from where I live, that somebody could, under the cover of darkness, come and say such hateful things. My first reaction, and again I got by serendipity a call from Councillor Karygiannis as this was going on, through the magic of 311 and through the magic of Councillor Karygiannis' cell phone, getting hold of our staff, we said to our staff at 10:30 at night, this has to be removed before the children get here, 8:30 tomorrow morning. And to our staff's credit, they didn't talk about boundaries. They didn't talk about whose property it was. Our staff said, this is unacceptable. You can trust us, councillors. We're going to be out there tomorrow morning. We're going to have it removed. So I would like to also thank our staff, and I'd actually also like to thank Cam Woolley from CP24. In addition to being a reporter, he sprang into action to help the children at this school, because when the power washer generator wouldn't start, Cam Woolley actually went and got his wrench and his toolkit and some other equipment from his car. I didn't know what they were, but apparently they're spark plug socket wrenches that helped our staff start the generator so that, again, all that racist graffiti was removed before the kids came. So, again, I want to thank our transportation staff and our work staff for their fast action, for answering their phones on a holiday Monday night at 10 p.m., 10:30 p.m. That's especially Edison Alexander, John Ayanu, Cody Hannon, Cameron Chapman, Jack Ramsey. Thanks to these individuals and the quick action of everybody, those 250 children and their parents came to school not with a big banner of racism, but a big banner of support from us and our staff as we walk the kids past some of the things that had happened. So, Madam Chair, Scarborough and Toronto is a place that we're all proud of. This type of hatred, this type of racism has no place anywhere, and we stand in solidarity with our friends, especially during the holy month of Ramadan. It's important that we link hands with them and let them know we love everybody from every nation every day. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now call for a motion to confirm the minutes. Deputy Mayor Holliday, you have a motion on the minutes from the last meeting.
I do, Speaker. Let me just find it here. The City Council confirmed the minutes of council from the regular meeting April 24, 25, 26, and 27, 2018 in the form supplied to the members.
All those in favor? Carry. Recorded vote.
The average just went up again.
You're one of the highest paying guys here. Mike's on. Can you hold for just a moment? Francis. It's Mike's line.
Councillor Layden, please.
Councillor de Bearmaker, please. Councillor Fletcher, please. Councillor Mahavik, please.
The motion to adopt the minutes carries unanimously, 38 in favor.
I will now call upon the committee chairs to introduce the reports. The chairs can speak about the reports for up to 5 minutes. Mayor Tory, you have a motion to introduce the Executive Committee report.
I do, Madam Speaker. I move that report from meeting 34 of the Executive Committee listed on the agenda of Council be presented for consideration. And I'd just like to deal with a couple of the matters that we dealt with at a very busy meeting, Madam Speaker. The first, which is before us as one of my key items at this meeting coming up very shortly, is the Eglinton East LRT project. This, of course, is a key element in the Council-approved transit network plan in Scarborough. And it contains, this report does, unanimously approved by the Executive Committee, the recommendation to Council that we extend the Eglinton LRT to Malvern. And this would include in the planning and design process, would allow City Council, when it comes back with that planning and design work done, to consider the entire project instead of looking at it in pieces. And it will come back with recommendations with respect to funding and phasing and the business case analysis. Secondly, it is to integrate, the report contains the recommendation from among 3 options as to how this line can be best integrated with the U of T Scarborough campus. And also there's one particular intersection that is dealt with in Scarborough where it's a complicated matter where tunneling is recommended just underneath that intersection. So I think what's important here, Madam Speaker, is that, as is the case with all of the other elements of the network transit plan for the city, as well as the one for Scarborough, every one of these projects, without exception, is moving forward in one degree or another with planning work, design work, and in some cases actual work on the project itself. And it really marks another important step forward for transit expansion in for the people of Scarborough and for the people of Toronto. The second thing that was done was at the Executive Committee, again with the unanimous approval, was the approval of the Senior Strategy 2.0. And this has 27 recommendations in it, 18 of them short-term, 9 in the medium term, but they really are things that I think in most cases are going to involve some degree or another of cooperation with the other governments, but they're things that simply have to be addressed better and in a more coordinated and easily navigable form than is the case today. In fact, the housing report that I think it's going to be recommended be considered at the same time talks there about the need for us to sort of find some body here in the city to better coordinate and make for more easy navigation by seniors of the myriad of services that not only we offer for that matter, but also offered by the other governments, because I don't think the average senior who's looking for support or help really cares which government offers the service. They really just care that they can find a way to get to the service and get signed up for it. But it also includes seeking funding for the piloting of a home share program through the Seniors Community Grant Program, a TTC travel training program, and various other things like that. And I think this is a very worthy report representing a lot of hard work done by a lot of people, including a lot of consultation that has been carried out. And as I said, I hope it will be discussed with the report that recommends the TCHC and the city establish an integrated service model for the 83 seniors buildings in the TCHC portfolio. And the purpose of this, and we've had to go through explaining this, and I think we've got a lot more work to do with the tenants in terms of having them understand the reasoning behind this isn't to somehow separate these off or do anything that is going to cause anything other than for, hopefully, overall service delivery to be better. A better landlord for seniors and a better place where they can live, where they can have access to a myriad of services and have it coordinated within those buildings and within the seniors housing unit, as it were, to oversee better delivery of services and better alignment of services being delivered to seniors. So the first thing that's happening is a services transition team, and it's going to be responsible for developing a governance structure that can allow all of this to happen in this kind of coordinated way that's more easily dealt with by seniors, and they're to report back to us with recommendations on the structure of this entity. And I think if you put these two things together, the seniors housing entity for TCHC, the 83 buildings, and the senior strategy 2.0, we're going to be taking a big step forward as a city with respect to how we look after our seniors. So those are the matters that will be the priority items first, and together with the other items in the Executive Committee report, which I commend to the members of Council. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Councillor Holliday, you have a motion to introduce the Audit Committee report.
Yes, I do, Madam Speaker. Thank you. That the report from meeting 12 of the Audit Committee listed on the agenda of Council be presented for consideration. I'll take just a quick moment to cover the 4 items for members of Council. We have AU 12.6, which would be a familiar report. Those are the business improvement areas, audited financial statements. There's a tranche in the package there, and I hope you familiarize yourself with that. AU 12.3 is the review of Toronto Transit Commission's procurement policies with respect to the specifics around Wheel-Trans accessible taxi service procurement. This is a receive for information report, but the details in it talk about an earlier procurement that the Auditor General followed up on and provided some advice to the Toronto Transit Commission on how to improve their procurement processes around the specifics of acquiring taxis for to supplement Wheel-Trans services. We have a report in here, AU 12.2, which is the Children's Services Division, opportunities to achieve greater value for childcare from public funds. There are 20 recommendations coming from the committee. I would recommend that members familiarize themselves with that report. It's been held. It is quite lengthy and very detailed in nature. If I can be of any assistance or may facilitate a connection for questions about this, please don't hesitate to ask. And finally, AU 12.1, another lengthy report, Toronto Court Services Collection of Provincial Offence Default Fines. You may have seen this in the news. It spoke to hundreds of millions of dollars in uncollected fines over the last number of years, and the auditor has come out with 31 recommendations to strengthen this process in collecting these fines. And there's 2 purposes for that. The first is the importance of the revenue of these fines for the City of Toronto, but maybe most importantly, in my opinion, is the message it says about justice. These aren't back invoices or monies owing. These are actual fines awarded by a provincial offences court. Many of them are related to highway traffic offences or Insurance Act offences. Many are to individuals that have not paid several fines, and some of them are to corporations that have not paid fines associated with findings in a court for activities that they have done, and some of those fines are in the tens of thousands of dollars. So I'm really pleased and proud of the work of the Auditor General on this file, and I hope you will support all of these recommendations because they're important to the City of Toronto and they're important to justice. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pasternak, you have a motion to introduce the Community Development and Recreation Committee report.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. That the report from meeting 28 of the Community Development and Recreation Committee listed on the agenda of Council be presented for consideration. I would simply bring your attention to CD 28.1, Ontario's Action Plan for Seniors, including a focus on long-term care. As many of us know in this chamber, an aging population with aging parents requires a massive infrastructure in the long term to provide supportive care as we age. There's an enormous shortage of such beds and an affordability issue as well. So a strategic plan going forward with all three levels of government at the table is part of a vital conversation planning for our aging population. There's a couple of other items in the agenda, as the Mayor mentioned, regarding seniors, and I think coupled together it will provide a clear roadmap and blueprint as we tackle the aging population in the years ahead.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson, you have a motion to introduce the Economic Development Committee report.
I do, Speaker, that the report from meeting number 29 of the Economic Development Committee listed on the agenda of Council be presented for consideration.
Thank you. Councillor Ainsley, you have a motion to introduce the Government Management Committee report.
Good afternoon, Madam Speaker. That the report from meeting number 27 of the Government Management Committee listed on the agenda of Council be presented for consideration.
Thank you. Councillor Palacio, you have a motion to introduce the Licensing and Standards Committee report.
Yes, I do, Madam Speaker. That the report from meeting 25 of the Licensing Standards Committee listed on the agenda of Council be presented for consideration.
Thank you. Councillor McMahon, you have a motion to introduce the Parks and Environment Committee report.
Yes, I do. That the report from meeting 27 of the Parks and Environment Committee listed on the agenda of Council be presented for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Shiner, you have a motion to introduce the Planning and Growth Management Committee report.
That the report from meeting 29 of the Planning and Growth Management Committee listed on the agenda of Council be presented for consideration. As has become customary, I've looked within the Council agenda. There's 460 new units, but 0 affordable housing units. There are a number of settlements. We've taken Section 37, which are confidential. They may take some cash, but they don't take units. And cash has not gotten us affordable units. Otherwise, they would have been incorporated within the development because there's no land to build them upon. So we could probably still do better as a group. I would bring your attention to, and will be asking the Speaker if she could time item PG 29.1. I'll ask her later. Minimizing the negative impacts of residential infill construction. An update, it is a new bylaw and a policy which staff brought forward to the committee that I think you would be well to hear, will appreciate the changes, and will help us in dealing with the impacts of residential development. And if you have that presentation, it will help make you aware of what we became aware at the committee of and the help it can give to you and your residents and the industry.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson, you have a motion to introduce Public Works and Infrastructure Committee report.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I do. That the report from meeting 29 of the Public Works and Infrastructure Committee listed on the agenda of Council be presented for consideration.
Thank you. Councillor Grimes, you have a motion to introduce the Etobicoke York Community Council report.
Yes, I do, and good afternoon, Madam Speaker. That the report from meeting 30 of the Etobicoke York Community Council listed on the agenda of Council be presented for consideration.
Thank you. Councillor Ajamari, you have a motion to introduce the North York Community Council report.
Yes, thank you. That the report from meeting 30 of the North York Community Council listed on the agenda of Council be presented for consideration.
Thank you. Councillor Holland, you have a motion to introduce the Scarborough Community Council report.
Good afternoon, Madam Speaker, and that the report from meeting 30 of the Scarborough Community Council listed on the agenda of Council be presented for consideration. I also want to mention that this was the last Community Council meeting for Councillor Chinley, and who is retired. And I'll also note that it was a grueling session this time with 19 items on the agenda.
No way. How did you manage? Serious?
This is what we persevered every Scarborough Community Council. We had persevered through the agenda, including Councillor Lee, through all 19 items on our agenda. But again, we want to acknowledge the last session that Councillor Lee participated in, and his time served with Community Council and with Council as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you.
construction hoarding.
Councillor Wong Tam, you have a motion to introduce the Toronto and East York Community Council report.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I have a motion that the report from meeting 32 of the Toronto and East York Community Council listed on the agenda of council be presented for consideration, and once again to thank the amazing team of city clerks who helped us shepherd 98 items through 10 hours of community council meetings. It was really an extraordinary amount of work for them, and also to congratulate members of East York Community Council because we were able to hold quorum throughout the entire 10 hours. Thank you very much. And Madam Speaker, it represents about four-fifths of what the other community councils are dealing with. Thank you.
Councillor Cressy, you have a motion to introduce the new business from city officials.
Thank you, Speaker. That new business from city officials listed on the agenda of council be presented for consideration.
Thank you. All those in favor of the motions, recorded vote.
Councillor Provincial.
Councillor Ainsley, please.
The motion carries unanimously, 41 in favor.
Are there any declarations of interest? Please indicate the committee, the item or motion number, and the nature of the interest. Mayor Tory.
Madam Speaker, this concerns item PW 29.3, approving accountability in the utility cut process. I'd like to declare an interest in that item on account of my previously disclosed involvement with the Rogers Group. This is an item that affects utility cuts, of which Rogers does many, and would be affected by the proposed changes.
Thank you. Councillor Hart.
Yes, thank you, Speaker. On page 3, EX 34.3, implementing tenants first, as my spouse is an employee of TCHC.
Thank you. I will now call for petitions. Are there any petitions at this time? Councillor Shan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have 1,966 petitions signed here, just about 34 short of 2,000. For a message of connecting Malvern to the Eglinton East LRT. So this petition, instead of reading the whole thing, I'll just briefly summarize, asking the City Council to consider extension to Malvern to the Eglinton East LRT, which was initially supposed to go only to Scarborough to campus UFT, to be extended to Malvern. So there is 1,966 Malvern residents signed petition here, presented on behalf of the community.
All those in favor of receiving the petitions, all in favor? Carried. Members, I will now review the order paper. We have two deferred items on this agenda. EX 33.10 on program advisory bodies, key activities for 2017, and EY 2955 on a 350-year-old oak tree, Coral Cable Drive. The Mayor has designated the following items as his key matters for this meeting. The first key matter will be item EX 34.1 on Eglinton East Light Rail Transit Project, update and next steps. And the second key item will be item EX 34.2 on the Toronto Senior Strategy. These will be our first and second item of business today. I also propose the following items be considered together. EX 34.3 on implementing tenants first, creating a seniors housing unit at Toronto Community Housing and transitioning towards a seniors housing and services identity at the city, with the Mayor's second key item, item EX 34.2 on the Toronto Seniors Strategy 2.0, and the Mayor has consented to considering this item with this key matter. The following related Planning and Growth Management Committee items: PG 29.4 TO Core Downtown Plan Official Plan Amendment, PG 29.5 Downtown Parks and Public Ground Plan, and PG 29.6 Downtown Mobility Strategy, and PG 29.7 Downtown Community Services and Facilities Strategy. Notices and motions are scheduled to be dealt with 2 p.m. tomorrow, only if the mayor's key matters have been completed. I propose that City Council set a time for a closed session if required later in the meeting. The City Clerk has noted the items that members wish to hold. I will now go through the items listed on the order paper to take additional holds, and I will recognize requests to make matters urgent and time-specific after I go through the items for additional holds. Once the order paper has been approved by Council, any change will need a 2/3 vote. Page 3. Councillor Fletcher.
Sorry, it was actually 34.3, which is now going to be heard with the mayor's key items. That's fine.
Yes. Councillor Al-Jamari.
Oh, I also have an amendment for 34.3.
Okay. Page 4. Councillor DiCiano.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to hold item EX 34.25, the 2018 Election Accessibility Plan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Al-Jamari.
Speaker, would you allow me to speak for almost 1 minute on this?
On what?
On, oh, I'm sorry, top of the page, 34.13.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I just want to say that this is an important aspect of some people's lives, the home dialysis question, and staff went far beyond the call of duty to implement this. We don't often stand up here and give kudos to our staff for actually getting in there and changing people's lives. But I have to say, this was brought forward by Michael McDonald in my office, and I want to publicly acknowledge that one person can make a whole lot of difference at City Hall. And thank you to Michael McDonald for doing this for our constituent, which turned out to be helpful to many constituents throughout Toronto. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McMahon.
Sure. I'd like to hold EX 34.20, City of Toronto's Indigenous Cultural Competency Training update. Thanks.
Page 5. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Speaker. Economic Development Committee meeting 29, item number 8. Major Cultural Organizations 2018 allocations, brackets, wards all.
Thank you. Councillor Fragadakis.
Sorry, just a moment. I think Councillor Kelly is holding the item that I wanted to hold, but give me 1 moment. I'm just trying to find what page it's on.
He's holding page 5, ED 29.8.
Yes, okay, thank you. Then I don't need to hold it.
Page 6. Councillor Kelly.
Speaker, Licensing and Standards Committee meeting 25, item number 4, amendments to Chapter 740, street vending, portrait artists, brackets, ward all.
Okay. Councillor DiCiano.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. GM 27.14, the expropriation of 30 Newbridge Road and 36 North Queen Street. I'd like to hold that for a few questions. And LS 25.3, same page, review the municipal code, chapter 447, fences.
Okay. Page 7. Councillor Holyday.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. PG 29.6, Downtown Mobility Strategy. May I hold that, please?
It's all being held. They're all being held together.
Just together?
It's all together.
That's on PG 29.6. You're holding, correct, Councillor Holyday? Okay, just 1 sec, please, Councillor Cressy. Councillor Holyday, am I correct, PG 29.6?
That is correct, Madam Speaker.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cressy?
Just a point of order. I thought items PG 29.4 through to PG 29.7 were all being dealt with as one item. So could we just clarify who has the hold on that item, as I had held PG 29.4 the main item?
So, yeah, actually, yeah, when we get to it.
They are.
Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have held PW 29.1, the Metrolinx projects. I could release that now. I just have some technical amendments that were given to me by transportation staff. So the clerks have those. If you want to hold it? No, I'll continue to hold it, but you would like to, yes, you, okay. Yeah, all right, thank you.
Councillor Fletcher.
Yes, I'll release PG 29.7 to Councillor Cressy because, as I understand it, they are all one big suite of reports and motions.
Okay, so you're releasing your name?
To him, yes.
Councillor Davis?
On page 8?
Okay, yes, let's go to page 8. Thank you. What item?
PW 29.7, Chapter 918, Technical Amendments clarifying the calculation of landscaping requirements for front yard parking.
Thank you. Councillor Holliday.
Sorry, Madam Speaker, her fingers beat me. Councillor Davis beat me to the button.
Councillor Shiner.
NY 30.4, request for direction report, official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment applications 260, 262, and 264, Finch Avenue East.
Thank you. Councillor DeGiorgio.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. EY 30.1, final report 2200 Islington Avenue.
EY 30.1?
Yes.
Okay, Councillor DeGiorgio. Councillor DeBearmaker.
Oh, sorry, I was at page 9, sorry.
Okay. Page 9, Councillor DeBearmaker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have two holds on page 9 under Scarborough Community Council, SC 30.3, the Scarborough Centre Transportation Master Plan, final report. And on page 9 under Scarborough Community Council as well, SC 30.4, 1250 Markham Road, zoning amendment and site plan applications, request for direction report.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Holliday.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to request recorded votes on NY 30.22, application to remove a private tree, 51 Crispin Crescent, and SC 30.19, application to remove a private tree, 34 Cartier Crescent. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so recorded vote on page 9, NY 30.22, which is application to remove a private tree, 51 Crispin Crescent, recorded vote.
Councillor Perruzza, please. Councillor DeGiorgio, Councillor Wong-Tam. Councillor Shiner, please.
Councillor Ainsley and Councillor Fletcher, please. And Councillor Troisi, please. Thank you. Councillor Fletcher, please.
Councillor Wong-Tam, your vote, please.
The item is adopted 36 to 5.
Page 9. Page 9, SC 30.19, recorded vote.
Councillor Pasternak, please, and Councillor Perruzza.
The item is adopted 35 to 6.
Councillor Pasternak.
You're back on the list.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to hold on page 9, NY 30.9, always stop control.
Thank you. Councillor Perks.
Thank you, Speaker. On page 10 TE 32.3, 2535 Liberty Street, I understand staff need me to move a technical amendment, and I'll get back to you when that's ready.
Okay, so you'll hold it until the...
Yes, please.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Page 11. Councillor Cressy.
Thank you, Speaker. I'd like to hold item TE 32.57, 1214, and 16 York Street, amendment to sections 16 agreement and road closures authorization. Page 11, item TE 32.57.
Thank you. Councillor Layton.
If I could just indulge 15 seconds of City Council's time, and this is regarding item TE 32.43, I just wanted to express my thanks to the developer for taking seriously a request I made about considering childcare in the podium of the building, as it was one of the last sites in Liberty Village that currently have zero childcare. They managed to come back with a reasonable rezoning request that would allow them to hand over the keys for a 50-child facility to the city at no cost to us.
Thank you.
The developer was Center Court. They get a gold star from me on this one and this one only.
Okay, thank you. Okay, page 12, Councillor Wong Tam.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I'm still on page 11. It's TE 32.19, 64 to 66 Wellesley Street East, 552 to 570 Church Street, and city-owned public laneway, official plan amendment, zoning amendment, and rental housing demolition application request for direction. I'm just hoping that we can have a recorded vote on this. And if you want to vote yes, it's to adopt the staff recommendation.
Is there an amendment? Did you say there was an amendment on
No,
it?
there's no amendment.
Oh.
I don't believe there's a... Do I need to hold this? No. Yeah. Just asking for a recorded vote.
Oh.
No.
Councillor Perruzza, please. Councillor Wong Tam, please.
Councillor Ainsley and Councillor Fletcher, please.
Councillor Shiner, please. Councillor Wong Tam and Councillor Perruzza.
Councillor Ainsley, please.
The item is adopted unanimously, 40 in favor.
Councillor Holiday.
Yes, I am on page 12, if that's okay. I just simply wanted to hold TE 32.67, traffic control signals, Mortimer Avenue and Dewhurst Boulevard North, and I wanted to release item CC 41.1 and adopt the recommendations in the report with a small amendment, which I don't think is contentious.
Does the staff have your amendment?
They do, and that is
Oh, there
to
it is. It's on the screen.
appoint Councillor Hart to Pewick because we've got
Yeah.
we've got quorum issues. We did lose quorum at the last meeting, and we don't want to wait a meeting cycle.
I actually like the fact that we didn't have quorum last meeting.
Okay, we have the amendment on the screen.
So I'll continue to hold. It's not a problem.
Yeah, we need that waterfront trail built.
Page 13. Councillor Palacio.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Page 13, CC 41.9, 386 to 394 Symington Avenue, 405 Perth Avenue, and 17 Kingsley Avenue, official plan and zoning by law amendment appeal.
Councillor Wong Tam.
On page 13, Madam Speaker, CC 41.10, 33 George Street West and 22 Elm Street, request for directions regarding local planning appeal tribunal appeal. I'd like to hold that, please.
Councillor Fletcher.
Yes, sorry, Speaker. I'm back one page, on page 12. CC 41.3.4, appointment of public members to Toronto Community Housing Board.
So you want to hold page 12, CC 41.4?
I do.
Okay, thank you. All right. I will now consider request to make items urgent and time specific. Councillor Shiner. Hold on. Councillor Grimes?
Sorry, Madam Speaker. On page 11, CC 41.6, I'd like to hold that, please. I'm sorry.
On page 11.
CC 41.6.
It's not page 11.
Page 13.
Page 13. I thought you said 11.
I might have.
Okay.
41.6.
All right. Councillor Shiner.
Madam Speaker, on page 7, PG 29.1, strategy for minimizing the negative impacts of residential infill construction. I'd like to do it sometime tomorrow so that our chief building official can be here. He has to be away at the end of the week, and I don't want to run out of time. What time would you suggest tomorrow?
It's hard to tell.
After notices of motion? If the mayor's items are completed?
Yeah, we have to do the mayor's key item first.
Well, after the mayor's key items and after notices of motions?
So you want to do it after the members' motions?
Yes.
Sure. Okay. On favor? Carried. Recorded. Huh? No, this is just for a timed item. You don't need a recorded vote? On favor? Carried. Councillor Robinson.
Yes, Madam Speaker. I'd like to time on page 5, Audit Committee AU 12.2, Children's Services Division, and have a report from the Auditor General, please. If we could do it after the infill item, that would be fine with me, following members' motion, infill, and then that one, or we could do it tomorrow morning.
Well, no, but we have to, we've got the mayor's key item.
Yeah, so then I'll suggest after the infill item that Councillor Shiner just put forward.
On favor? Recorded, please. Recorded.
Councillor Wong Tam, your vote, please. Thank you.
Councillor Mihevik, when you're seated, please.
The motion to time the item carries 38 to 2.
Councillor Ford?
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. I've been asked by city clerks to move this motion, and that I'll move once it's up on the screen. In accordance with Section 27-60 of Council Procedures, that City Council remove CA 21.1 heading appointment to the public member appointment of a public member to the Toronto Public Library Board for the Civic Appointments Committee and bring the item forward to City Council for consideration.
Okay. On favor? Okay, and just one sec, hold on. I think Councillor Pasternak, did you have an interest?
I'll declare an interest in this item out of an abundance of caution, as my wife technically still works for the Toronto Public Library.
Right, thank you. Councillor Ford?
Yes, Madam Speaker, I'm happy to speak to it. The Civic Appointments Committee convened one day past the closing date for council, for it to be considered on council, and that it is urgent due to the Library Act that someone has to be appointed.
So you're just introducing it. We're not voting on it now. Yeah. Yeah. So Councillor Davis?
So the meeting was completed, there's recommendations to bring forward, and they simply didn't meet the timeline to have it on the agenda. Okay.
On favor? Carried. Councillor Mamalidi, you have your name up for, and can we clear the screen, please, because there's so many names that are being added. I'm not. Councillor Mamalidi.
Madam Speaker, 29.55, EY 29.55.
Page 3.
Page 3. Now, there is a confidential attachment. I'm wondering if we can deal with this when we deal with confidential matters.
Yes, and we haven't timed that yet, so when we do, we can deal with it.
So I'd like to move this to that so that we deal with it at that time.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Look at that. I was feeling a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. When?
Is that okay, Mayor?
Yeah.
Enjoy your afternoon, Georgia. It's nice to have you.
All those in favor of adopting the order paper and all items not held. Councillor Pasternak, well, we already voted on that, so you don't have to. Okay, all those in favor of adopting the order paper, recorded vote.
Councillor Karygiannis, please. Councillor Perruzza, please. And Councillor Kelly.
The motion to adopt the order paper carries unanimously, 37 in favor.
Councillor Aljamari.
Thank you. Page 13, CC 41.8, 39 to 41 Roehampton, and 50 Eglinton Avenue East. I'm declaring an interest in this item as I own property on Roehampton.
Okay. Thank you. Members of Council, I want to stress the importance of preparing your motions in advance. The clerk staff are here to help you prepare your motions. In particular, if you intend to move a motion during the release of holds, I will insist that your motion be prepared in advance and given to the clerk. If you do not have your motion ready, I will not recognize you, and I'm also reminding members that you must state your motion first before you speak to it. Members, City Council follows a routine for the processing and adding of any motions without notice during the meeting. Please remember that a motion without notice must include a reason for urgency. If you have an urgent motion without notice you wish to bring forward at this meeting, please give your motion to the City Clerk staff. They will prepare the necessary procedure motion for my review along with your motion. The Chair must agree the motion is urgent before you can seek leave to introduce it at this meeting. It will require 30 votes to add a motion without notice to the agenda during the meeting. Motions added to the agenda in this way are not subject to a vote to waive referral to a committee or agency. I will be reviewing all motions carefully and will advise council after each recess which motions need a motion to add to the agenda. Now we will continue. We will go to the mayor's key item. First item, which is on page 3, EX 34.1 Eglinton East Light Rail Transit Project Update. Questions to staff. Councillor Mihevc.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I think this is a very good project, and I look forward to it happening, and these questions are in that context. One is, has staff done an analysis of utility relocations that need to occur? Is there a lot of work that way? We found that was a big obstacle in the Eglinton Connects.
Through the Speaker, we've only done very preliminary work. That analysis of utility relocation will need to come later.
So your design, so there are a number of very good graphics and pictures. Are we at 5% design, 10% design?
We, through the Speaker, we have been given budget and authority to move toward 5% design, but we have not yet reached that. Part of what we're looking for is direction in order to be able to take it through to the 5% level.
Okay. And so the only funding that you have now is to take it to 5% design. We don't really know if the feds are in, the province is in, and the amount of monies that we will be required to put in. Is that right?
I'll defer to
through the Speaker. We anticipate that we'll be coming forward in Q1 with a full funding plan for Council's consideration. At this point in time, the project would be suitable for federal funding under the PTIF Phase 2 program.
And there's money in that account that we could be perhaps draw on.
We have, Council's already approved $7 million to do design work and go to the next step, which is a Class 3 cost estimate.
In terms of delivery strategy, is this going to be a TTC project, a Metrolinx project, or some hybrid? Who's taking this project on?
So at this stage, through the Speaker, the asset will be funded entirely by way of the city. The city will also be the procurement lead. However, the city through TTC may engage IO in the delivery of the project. That determination has yet to be made.
When will that be made?
It's likely to be made once Council approves a definitive funding commitment to the project, again in Q1 of 2019.
Okay. Have we done the, call it an equivalent of the Eglinton Connects going east from Kennedy to make sure our OP and zoning is up to the new project?
Through the Speaker, one of the things that we've recently retained a consultant to do is a planning study similar to Eglinton Connects along this stretch of...
So it's in process?
It's in process.
Great. There's no mention in the report of the yard. Are you anticipating using the yard at Mount Dennis? Or did I miss that?
Through the Speaker, no, we are looking at the possibility of a yard in the east. The location of that will depend on the phasing of the project. There was already for the Shepherd LRT a yard planned up at Shepherd and Morningside area.
So you haven't lost sight of that piece. So if all goes well, if we take it to 5%, we make some good decisions, we use federal money, use some of our own money, when do you anticipate the shovel can go in the ground?
So through the Speaker, we would need to do some further work, but it would probably be a 4-year process in terms of the final design and construction. So it could start in 2020 or 2021.
2021 and finish in 2025, something like that. That's the current. I'm not holding it to anything, and I know how these things slip.
Right. That would be a possibility, yes. I mean, so much depends on the timing of other projects and capacity to deliver on the many different priorities.
Right. Two other questions related is, just so I understand it, basically, who's funding the Durham BRT along, I forget what street it is. Is it Ellesmere?
Yes, that is being funded almost in its entirety through Metrolinx in the province.
So we have no skin in that game, but we're connecting to that. They're okay, great. And the last question I have is, for the stretch between, I think it's Kennedy and the next major artery, north-south artery, we will have both an underground subway and an LRT on top of it. Is that correct?
Through the speaker, there will be, the LRT will be running above the subway to where the subway would turn up McCowan.
Was that taken into
That
consideration?
was your last question, Councilor Mihevik.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Campbell.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just trying to understand a little bit about this project. So, the Eglinton, this is for transportation. The LRT extension from the crosstown that's going to the U of T. This will use 90-meter trains. Is that correct? This is the same technology.
Through the speaker, yes, the same technology is being used on crosstown.
So that's one continuous network then. Why then the change for the extension to Malvern and using the 60-meter trains?
No, that's not a change.
Oh.
The same trains would be running through from Kennedy all the way up to Malvern.
Oh, so they will?
Yes.
But I thought I read in here there were 60 meters as opposed to 90 meters.
No, through the speaker, the approved EA was based on a 60-meter train. One of the recommendations is also related to MTO work on the bridge, crossing the 401, that they need to take account of the fact that we're using 90-meter trains, not 60-meter trains. But it will be 90-meter trains the full length.
So from Mount Dennis all the way to Malvern, it's one continuous network.
Through the speaker, that is correct, although the service pattern would need to be determined whether one train always runs from one end to the other.
I see, okay. So is this, is the piece before Malvern, is this new to council right now for approval?
Through the speaker, no, council has approved the work that we're undertaking to this point. We've got a budget that will take us to 5% design, and we need to update a business case. Okay. What we're seeking is authority on 3 key parts of the line in order to be able to advance that design further.
And those parts include the overpasses or underpasses that you've referred to in here?
The parts include how we're dealing with the part of the line going through the U of T campus, what we're doing at the intersection of Kingston, Lawrence, and Morningside, and also the options that we considered for the extension into Malvern.
So I read through this quickly, I have to confess, but it talks about the intersection overpasses or bypasses at a couple of locations. And it said the same measuring stick was used when looking at the Eglinton West LRT. And but I didn't see those numbers in this report. Is there a reason why they're not here, or are they here?
Through the speaker, those numbers would be found in attachment 1, which is the detailed technical analysis of the grade separations at Kingston, Warren, Morningside.
Right, okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right, and so what is the next stage then, Mr. Purtle? You're coming back with a business case for a ridership? Is that the next case? And will that be, is that for the U of T portion, or the portion of the U of T, or the whole section?
Through the speaker, we will be coming back with an updated business case for this that would look at the full length of the line and present to council the costs, along with different options for how it might be phased or covered, depending on what the results are.
And then the last question refers to funding. So this is, there is no, aside from the design work, there's no City of Toronto funding allocated to this, correct?
Through the speaker, at present, there is no city funding. It's below the line.
And has the provincial government, the current provincial government, have they made any commitment to funding the Eglinton East LRT?
There has been no commitments to date from the province.
So all that we have is the federal commitment for infrastructure funding.
That's correct, yes.
Which is fairly flexible.
Well, the federal funding is typically up to 40% of the construction cost.
Right, thank you. Thank you for the answers.
Thank you. Councillor Shan?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to get some clarification or confirmation as to how this changes how Malvern gets connected to Eglinton East LRT from the previous plans that were there as potential extension to Malvern as a potential later step. How does this change in terms of Malvern being connected? Does it mean we are connected into the one program, one project for the Eglinton East LRT?
Through the Speaker, if Council approves this recommendation, we would be advancing the design on the recommended alignment up to Malvern as part of the whole project. It would so we will be coming back with a business case on the full line up to Malvern.
Okay. And with respect to the connectivity of the route, so there is a possibility that somebody from if this project was approved and funded, somebody getting on Malvern Town Centre could technically be going to Mount Dennis in just the same trip.
Through the Speaker, yes. Once this is built, then someone could travel clear across the city and even further to the airport.
Okay. Now, in terms of questions around funding again, if considerations are being made for funding this project, would that mean that the entire project would be first considered before it's taken into parts?
Through the Speaker, yes. As part of the stage gate process, we would be coming back in Q1 of 2019 with a more advanced costing for Council's consideration. And then should Council elect to proceed, we would identify a funding plan for the project.
So at what stage does the community, maybe going back to the staff on this side, what stage would the community consultation come back to Malvern community on this particular project if this was to be approved today?
So through the Speaker, we will be going out to the community again in late June or early July with some consultations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Davis.
I just wondered if you could remind us again then, so 5% design is, we will get back in the first quarter of 2019, is that right?
That is correct.
And the cost to bring this project to 5% design has been funded by the federal government?
Through the Speaker, we have a commitment from Council, and it was also eligible for PTIF funding under the first round.
I'm sorry?
So yes, we've also applied some federal PTIF funding to this initial
So how
work.
much was city money and how much was PTIF money?
Through the Speaker, $3.5 million is PTIF federal funding. The balance is funded through the city.
So what is that balance?
The balance would be 3.5.
How much did you said some is PTIF and some is city.
Yes.
So what's the breakdown between the two?
Half of the $7 million.
Oh, I see, 3.5 and
Yes.
3.5. Okay. And just remind me, when the business case comes, we'll get ridership information based on development projections. That will be in the business case?
Through the Speaker, yes, that information will be in the business case.
Okay. And at that point, you're saying there will be more infrastructure money, maybe Mr. CFO. How much federal infrastructure, remind us, how much federal infrastructure money we have, for what period of time, and how much has been committed?
So the federal government has announced through PTIF 2 funding allocation to the City of Toronto of $4.9 billion. The exact details of the projects have yet to be announced and have yet to be agreed to through the city as well as the province.
And
in
what
addition to that, the province has committed $4 billion.
Okay, and that for $8.9 billion, are they both over the same time frame?
Yes, they are.
And what is that again? 18 to?
It's my understanding is that the program is available from 2018 to 2020. Sorry, 2028.
To 2028. So the actual 5% design costs are $7 million. And we're getting 4.9 billion. So that 4.9 billion from the feds and 4 billion from the province, how much has been committed to which projects?
Through the Speaker, that determination has yet to be made. We expect that we'll be entering into negotiations with the province as well as the federal government and reporting back to Council on the project list that would constitute or would be eligible for that funding.
So when will we get the proposed list of projects to be funded with the PTIF money?
So through the Speaker, Council has already approved a priority list of projects in 2016. That list, in fact, the cost of bringing on those projects exceeds the envelope, and so we will have to come back. My educated assumption would be in 2019, sometime in 2019, to seek Council's approval of that priority list.
I thought we were getting a whole set of priorities for the city that was coming through the planning process. When is that report?
Through the Speaker, we will be undertaking the second half of the official plan analysis of transportation policies, which will include an update of the transit priority map.
When is that?
We will be coming to Planning and Growth Management to launch that process in July.
How are these going to fit together?
This will not be about establishing funding priorities, simply about establishing the transit projects that we...
However, I suspect the priorities and the money will not match. And so we will be making choices about what funding we're going to spend the federal and provincial money on, and that's that 8.9 billion. And surely we should be using the priorities established through the planning process. That was always the intention, to look at where the money will go.
That was your last question.
Is that
Through the Speaker, I think it's absolutely fair to be able to prioritize the projects through some form of lens. And I think that's a planning lens. And so I think staff would be coming forward in 2019, both with business cases and analysis, as well as priorities for that funding envelope. I should also add that that $8.9 billion will be matched through city funding. So the envelope is, in fact, in excess of about $13 billion.
Thank you. Councillor Layton.
Yes, hello, and thank you very much, and through you, Madam Speaker. So talk me through this. I find this business case fascinating, and like just looking through what questions we were asking. And so I just want to go through sort of the two bigger questions. So the Kingston-Lawrence-Morningside intersection. Can you talk us quickly through the analysis and what we looked at that got us to this decision to underground it?
So through the Speaker, we had extensive traffic and travel analysis done of that intersection. It's one of the busiest and most congested intersections in the city, largely because of the volume of traffic coming in Kingston Road from the east, and looked at different scenarios or different options for the way the LRT could run through that intersection and what would be the impacts on traffic in the area.
So you decided that because of the flow of traffic, the economic activity versus the cost, it was actually a better investment to underground it, right? Fair enough?
Through the Speaker, yes, that is correct.
And you looked at things like trip duration, average time per mode, occupancy factors, peak hour, all those things.
Through the Speaker, we were looking at impacts for all road users, but we also looked at a broad range of criteria as part of our evaluation framework. So it was not just.
And you determined this mode, this way, underground for this location. And then you did the same thing for U of T Scarborough, the Scarborough connection, correct?
That's correct.
Using the same criteria.
The balance of the criteria might have been different in each location because it was not so much about traffic. I mean, it was traffic impacts, but on U of T, it's also about serving the development and the students at that campus.
Sure. So forecasted a little bit into what the development might be there and how this connection may work better.
Through the speaker, that is correct. We needed.
And how difficult was it? Like it looks. Lee Fisher, was this an expensive report? Cost a lot of money, as far as reports go.
Through the speaker, that one was probably less than $100,000.
Less than $100,000. And what did? How long did it take?
Through the speaker, that took several months of analysis.
So a couple months of analysis, under $100,000, and we got a business case saying, here go underground and here go above ground. Fair enough? A good assessment?
Through the speaker, there was other work that was going on as well besides the traffic analysis.
It wasn't just this.
It wasn't.
I gotcha.
There were several.
But this work was a couple of months, under $100,000, that said, here's the business case for this, over the business case for other things, correct?
Through the speaker, you are correct. There was the engineering design on top of that too.
On top of that, sure. But that was included in this cost, so the business analysis could have been less than that? No, it was in addition.
Through that, there were other
So
costs.
$100,000 to get us a business case for what to do on this line in this extension.
For the analysis of that intersection?
Okay.
Yes.
Is there any reason why we couldn't conduct a similar technical analysis for the extension of Line 2? The extension for the Line 2 subway line. Is there any reason, technical reason why we couldn't do that? Come up with a business case cost analysis report.
Yeah.
Through the speaker, we have done a business case for the Scarborough subway extension.
Okay,
that was presented to council before.
Councillor Layton, this is not before us. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Speaker. With respect to the number of passengers heading towards, say, UTSC, or just simply points east of Kennedy Road, what percentage would be going along the subway going east, and what percentage would be going along Eglinton? Have you worked out those splits?
We will need, through the speaker, we will need to be updating the ridership analysis as part of the business case for this line.
And how often would the Eglinton trains hit the stations going east, and presumably coming back going west?
Through the speaker, it would be designed for about a 4-minute headway. The service plan will need to be developed as we get closer to operations.
I was fascinated by the prospect of tunneling it when you get over to the Lawrence Avenue Morningside area. That's a very heavily trafficked part of the East End. Where would the tunnel begin if you're going east?
Through the speaker, it would begin just south of Lawrence on Kingston Road. So we'd have to start a couple of hundred meters.
How do you get south of?
Pardon me?
Okay. Like, give me a street.
Do we have
like Mance?
Through the speaker, I'm sorry, I don't have a street name right at the tip of my fingers.
And where would it come up? Goes up on Morningside. Would it be at the Collegiate?
Through the speaker, we have a map on page 15 that shows where the tunnel would go under and then where it would emerge up Morningside, just a short way north of the intersection of Kingston and Morningside. It would start to emerge.
From the executive summary, so I'll take a look at that map. Thank you. What about the hours of that service?
Through the speaker, the hours of this service would be similar to other TTC rapid transit lines, so it would probably start around 5:45 in the morning and run until about 1 o'clock or 1:30 the next morning.
Okay, and finally, would a change in government could a change in government theoretically interfere with this project? Or is the money irrevocably committed?
Through the Speaker, that would be hard to speculate at this time. We'll have to see what happens.
Sorry?
That would be very hard, difficult to speculate at this time what that impact might be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker.
Councillor Pasternak.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm just looking through the history of the decision-making on this project, and my reading of it is this is a Phase 2 Metrolinx funded project or unfunded project?
No, this was not a Phase 2 Metrolinx project. This is a project, I believe, that was initiated through the city.
So on page 4, now I haven't clicked the link, it identified Eglinton East LRT as a key priority for Phase 2 federal infrastructure funding. Is that considered a Phase 2 project, or?
Yes, it's considered a Phase 2 project, but it's a Phase 2 PTIF federal funding project. It has nothing to do with Metrolinx.
So 5 years ago, in May of 2013, Council declared the link between Yonge and Sheppard and Sheppard West Station to be a Phase 2 Metrolinx funded project. It was a vote of 24 to 19 it carried. I'm just wondering how much work has been done. A lot of work has been done on this, which is not a Phase 2 project. But I'm just wondering how much work has been done on the North York Relief Line.
Through the Speaker, that extension of the Sheppard Line west from Yonge will be considered as part of the exercise that I mentioned earlier that will be brought to Planning and Growth Management Committee, the update of the transit priority map.
So a number of motions supporting this motion have been passed over the last 5 years, including asking staff to report back on the viability and cost of an environmental assessment, asking staff to use the feeling congested model to provide a cost range and funding options for an environmental assessment, reporting back on the efficacy of completing that line. Now, maybe I missed something, but I haven't seen any report or response to any of these motions supporting Council's direction. I'm just wondering how the Eglinton East project got all this attention and millions of dollars in funding, and yet this project doesn't seem to resonate.
Through the Speaker, as I mentioned, we will be addressing that Sheppard West extension as part of our update of the transit priorities in the official plan. In terms of how decisions were made about funding, we are following the direction of Council that gave us funding to advance the design of the Eglinton East.
When do you think you'll be reporting back?
So we will be bringing a report to Planning and Growth Management Committee in July to launch the process of the second phase of the official plan review, and then in the first, probably in the first few months of 2019, come back with a full report to Council.
Okay. One last question. When we did the, I guess the York University Rapid Rocket Express bus lane up off of Dufferin and through to the university, through up to, I guess, Kiel and so forth, they made a financial contribution, if my notes here are correct. Transit, high-level transit going into university campuses. Is that a safe assumption? My notes indicate they made a financial contribution and paid half. I don't know whether.
Through the Speaker, I don't have exact figures, but understand from the TTC that they did make some contribution.
So based on that precedent and that model, is U of T contributing anything to this project that goes right into their campus?
Through the Speaker, we haven't reached that stage yet, but certainly that has been a part of the conversations we've been having with U of T to date.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor de Bearmaker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think I'll have some, I guess I'll call it transit questions and maybe some finance questions as well. But through you, Madam Speaker, to the appropriate staff. I'm wondering, in this report, you talk a lot about the Kennedy Station, I'll call it interchange, where we have the GO train tracks, the crosstown, and the subway all merging together in one, I'll call it knot. Is it your submission to us that all of this can work and sort of get through that funnel and our crosstown can actually get through okay?
Through the Speaker, yes, we do know that it can be designed to work. I wouldn't call it a knot, but certainly it's a complex hub. But we are working to ensure that it will function.
So it's a complex hub.
Yes.
How many inches extra space do we have in that complex hub on each side of the tracks before we get to the right-of-way? A lot of inches or a few inches?
Through the Speaker, that's a question that we can only answer after detailed design.
Okay. And is it my understanding as well, the design of the original Transit City LRT system in Scarborough was for the crosstown to end at Kennedy subway station, say for you and I to get off that LRT, walk 100 meters or so down a platform and get on a different LRT and take that east end run out to Scarborough campus. Was that the original concept?
Through the Speaker, that was the Transit City concept. The Eglinton crosstown has been designed in such a way to just continue going east, and so we're connecting there.
And do you think that's, although it wasn't recommended by staff a number of years ago, maybe 10 years ago, do you think that's a better option for transit and for people in Scarborough, to do it the way you're suggesting now?
Through the Speaker, I think that having a seamless through connection is better transit service, yes.
And will the cars be a different size under your proposal now that are going out to Scarborough campus than they were before? Or does the car size stay the same?
Through the Speaker, we are adjusting. Part of what we're needing to do in the design is adjust to match the length of cars, the length of LRTs that will be used in the Eglinton crosstown, which are longer than what was originally planned.
Okay. And our cost estimate up to Scarborough campus is approximately how much?
When we reported before, it was at around between 1.5 and 1.67 billion, but we need to update those cost figures based on the further design and planning work.
And do we have a scale of what going from the, I'll call it the Pan Am Pool or Scarborough campus up to the Malvern Mall would cost? Is it $500 million, $1 billion?
Through the Speaker, that's in the neighborhood of around $400 million, that extension.
So we are looking at a very preliminary stage. Your submission to us today is that if council wishes to pursue this LRT project up to Malvern, the cost for us to make that investment is going to be in the neighborhood of $2 billion.
Through the Speaker, we don't have a full costing yet. And so I can't say what that final number will be, but that will be part of our updated business case.
But you did say $1.6 billion, call it base cost, with an additional $400 million to get up to Malvern Mall. I add up those two numbers, I get about $2 billion.
Right. So through the Speaker, if you add those. But there are other aspects of the design that we're still working through that will have an impact on that may have an impact on that cost estimate. So I would not want to stick with that figure right at this point.
Okay. And through you, Madam Speaker, I think it may be a finance question. We've had federal and provincial announcements. Is it $9 billion, I'll call it, of new money or more or less new money that's been announced?
Yes, with one exception, and that is the federal contribution includes $660 million for the Scarborough subway extension. So yes, for the most part, it is new money.
And if we take that, call it, even if we call it $8 billion, if we added up our LRT projects across the city, and the downtown relief line and our priority transit projects, how much would that list be roughly?
Oh. So the list, again, very, very little design, almost 0% design for most of these projects. Very high order of magnitude would be about $16 billion.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Speaker, through you to staff. I think the question was asked by Councillor Pasternak regarding funding or contribution by UFT to this transit line going up into their campus and beyond. What did York University contribute with respect to the York Region line? Did they contribute any funding for the subway expansion?
Through the Speaker, no, York University did not make any financial contribution towards the capital cost of the Toronto-York Spadina subway extension.
Why was
that? Well, it was essentially a fully funded project. Okay. When Council first approved it back in 2008, the contributions were made by the province, the federal government, as well as York Region, and it was fully funded.
So would it then be fair for us to expect the University of Toronto Scarborough campus to make a contribution to this expansion?
So I don't believe that, that a precedent has been set at this stage, and I think we should be. We will be consulting with the university to see if it can offer any form of contribution.
All right. I just want to turn my attention to what I would call, we've heard the questions around the transit business case, but it seems to me that there is an economic development case that's here as well. We have Create-TO, we have obviously our Toronto real estate. We're building transit in an area where there should be another component part to this, which is to look at economic development and that opportunity. Since we have this organization, Create-TO, are we looking at assembling and perhaps acquiring land as we look at this great plan to build transit into this area so that we could actually have an opportunity where revenue generation could actually help us as a city and help our system in terms of generating revenues to build further transit lines?
So through the Speaker, we've already started the work of looking at the what we refer to as transit-oriented development. So where we know that we're developing and expanding transit, looking at those sites to see where there's opportunities for housing, for economic growth, et cetera.
So we're sorry, Speaker, I'm just having a hard time even seeing the staff.
Councillor Pragadakis, please, it's hard.
So when will this plan or this business case as it relates to economic development and this expansion of transit plan, when will this come forward? Will this come forward together with respect to the transit information that will come forward or the detailed plan later, or will it come at some later date?
We're hoping to get the first part of it through when we report back, and then there might be some additional work that comes later in the year.
And that will be reported here to Council?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Speaker.
Councillor Matlow to speak. Well, I don't have control over that mic. Can we turn that mic on? Okay, it's on now.
Great, and I'm going to be using the projector as well. Madam Speaker, I don't know anyone in this room who doesn't support the.
Do you have a motion?
Yeah, I've got two motions.
Okay,
excuse me.
can you please speak to your motion before you speak?
So I will speak to the motion directly. So I don't believe that anyone in this room. By the way, there's two motions.
Yeah, can you present your motion, then speak to your motions?
I am.
Okay.
So basically, I'm replacing what the Executive Committee has submitted with a plan to move forward with the original master agreement, to move forward with the 7-stop LRT, then put our money where our mouths are, use the savings to actually, rather than pretend we have a funding plan for the Eglinton East Crosstown, to actually fund it now, to move forward with serving those residents to U of T Scarborough, and have a more efficient way to extend to Malvern. We still have to work on the funding together, but to ensure that we actually save them commute time. Now, I don't believe that there's anyone in this room who doesn't agree that we need to support the Eglinton Crosstown East. This is part of the plan that I've been arguing for, which is the 24-stop plan that would see 7 stops replacing the RT, so that we don't just lose 4 stations on the RT. Most residents in Scarborough I hear from don't even know that. And provide the additional 17 stops to U of T Scarborough. What this would also do, and I just want to show you a map, by saving the federal dollars along with the city contribution. Could I have this up on the screen, Madam Speaker? See, this is what I just find so ridiculous. Under John Tory's plan, just to get this one-stop subway, we would actually be spending hundreds of millions of dollars to go the wrong way to get to Malvern if we were to extend there. So in other words, we'd be going all the way east, that's great, U of T Scarborough, and then going back west to get to Malvern Town Centre, when, according to the original EAA approved plan that already has, not only, it even has a station completely designed, we would be able to move forward with a plan that would actually save Malvern residents commute time. So in other words, John Tory's plan, the executive committee plan, would actually leave Malvern residents on the bus longer. Madam Speaker, there's a point of something.
Out of order.
Yes, point of order, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Speaker, I respect Councillor Matlow's presentation and so on, but he keeps referring to John Tory. It is Mayor Tory or Mayor John Tory. I don't believe that addressing the name of the individual in that particular manner is appropriate. I think that respecting the quorum and the decorum in this environment, we ought to use your proper name. I'd maybe just ask you to ask Councillor.
I completely agree with my colleague. That was unintentional oversight, and of course I'd be happy to call him Mayor
I
Tory.
was speaking to Councillor Pasternak,
Yeah,
so I
no.
apologize.
No, I agree with Councillor Thompson. Yeah.
Yes, Councillor Matlow,
Yeah.
can you address?
I think Mayor Tory's plan is fundamentally wrong and will leave Malvern residents on the bus longer. It also unnecessarily spends over $1 billion on a line, it unfunds a plan that could be funded now. You know, I've been to Malvern, and I hear residents tell me, number one, that they don't even understand the differences between the different plans. I've heard that from people who are riding the RT now, who don't understand that Mayor Tory and others want to replace 4 of the stops, basically just have 4 of the stops disappear for 1 stop at a mall. And
just one sec. Point of order, Councillor Shan.
Josh Matlow to avoid white-splaining to Malvern residents transit. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead. Councillor Matlow.
And I believe Malvern residents would be ripped off by this plan, the plan that's being suggested by the executive committee today. We could, right now, if we chose to, move forward with the master agreement to build 7 stops that was envisaged under the original plan, and add an additional 8th stop to serve Malvern residents if we choose to fund it. We could fund now with the savings of not moving forward with the boondoggle of a one-stop subway, but use the federal and city contributions to move forward with the 17-stop extension to U of T Scarborough. If we put politics aside and put people first, we would do the right thing. Unfortunately, this council isn't prepared to do the right thing. But I hope you will, because I know your better selves want to. I would also add this. I find it remarkable. Do you remember the 2016 briefing note by the TTC, the controversial one, that said unequivocally that, putting an LRT platform at Kennedy was going to be impossible, to paraphrase. They said it couldn't be done. Now, all of a sudden, they say that it could be done easily. It could be done within 12 months, now that this is something that the mayor supports. And over again, every time that I've asked for information from...
Thank you, Councillor Matlow. Your time's up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, can you just allow me to look at the motions? Yes.
the speaker, so I waited till after he was finished for my point of order.
Yeah, I'm reviewing the motion and then I'll make a ruling.
It's very
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Shan to speak.
Madam Speaker, I consistently hear folks saying that people in Malvern don't understand the plan, they don't know about this, as if these are people who have very limited knowledge or capacity to understand this thing. So it's very important that 1,966 people signed a petition to extend Eglinton East LRT from Scarborough campus to Malvern because they see a value in that transit project. So to call that project as a useless way or a kind of a, the same folks who argue that there are a lot of people traveling within Scarborough need to also understand there are people who are going within Scarborough that needs that extra transit options as well. But having said that, I just want to thank Mayor John Tory and the Executive Committee and all the staff for hearing the people of Malvern to be connected to the Eglinton East LRT. Now, with the Smart Track expansion, with the Scarborough subway extension to Scarborough Town Centre, and with this LRT project going to Malvern, every single ward within Scarborough, all 10 of them will be connected to higher order transit. And that is the kind of network we are talking about, not just one part of Scarborough, not just south part of Scarborough. With this subway extension, with the Smart Track, with the Eglinton East LRT going to Malvern, we get all of the wards connected. And now, it doesn't mean that future connectivity from Malvern to Shepherd Station or to the Shepherd subway extension would not be connected later. But it is for us to think big and make sure that we have a network of transit options for our residents in Malvern. Now, many residents in Malvern have been very engaged in transit. Our transit town halls have had people come out and speak. Our community organizations are active. And it's to say that the communities there who come from very complex political environments in their countries of origin, who have had extensive knowledge about transit systems that are much more complex than this, to be calling those folks as people who do not understand what they're getting or what they're losing or what is better for them it's a bit of white-splaining, I would say. And I think it's very important for us to take the context. If folks want to come door knocking with me anytime, come with me and we can talk about transit options as to what people see. Because extension of Scarborough subway is part of the network. Extension of LRT, Eglinton East LRT to Malvern is part of the network. Smart Track is. I think once we get all of these three things, as I said earlier, all 10 wards within Scarborough will be connected to higher order transit, and that's what all of us in Scarborough are looking forward. A connectivity within Scarborough, a connectivity from Scarborough to downtown that is effective and that can serve a lot more people. Thank you.
I'm going to make a ruling on Councillor Matlow's motion. I just received a copy of it. So motion 1B, I'm going to rule that motion out of order. The Scarborough subway is not before us, so I'm moving that out of order. Councillor Matlow? I'm ruling it out of order. So if you want to challenge me, you can challenge me. No. I made a ruling, Councillor Matlow. There's no debate. I made a ruling.
Madam Speaker, please. Thank you. I simply respectfully stand up to challenge your decision.
Okay, so you're going to challenge? Okay, ring the bells. The chair has been challenged. To uphold the decision of the chair, recorded vote. The chair has been challenged. That's what we're voting on now. Scarborough subway is not before us. I've already made the ruling, Councillor Fletcher. Yes.
Councillor Kelly, please. Councillor Perruzza.
Yes.
The chair is upheld, 28-9.
Councillor De Bearmaker to speak.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise certainly to support the study that's before us, the recommendations that are before us, and I am a strong supporter of getting the LRT line not to stop and dead end at Kennedy Road, but to go further east to the end of Eglinton so that someday, this city, we truly will have a crosstown. We have a project now where we're spending billions of dollars on what's called an Eglinton crosstown. The only problem with the Eglinton crosstown, it's really the Eglinton downtown, because the Eglinton crosstown pokes across the Scarborough border and dead ends at the Scarborough subway station. It doesn't reach 80% of the people who live in Scarborough. So how we came to a conclusion that an LRT line that dead ends just across the border of Scarborough is actually across town simply isn't true unless you build it all the way to the east end of Eglinton Avenue, all the way up to Scarborough campus and the Pan Am Centre, all the way up to the Malvern Mall and to the Malvern community, so that we will be connected. And when you build that line and you build the Smart Track line, which piggybacks on the GO train tracks that many of our residents in Scarborough look at while they are squished on buses, they drive past the GO train tracks on Lawrence Avenue, up on Finch Avenue, because it's not connected. Well, and some of them in those locations don't even have stations right now. But once we open up those Smart Track stations, people will have more flexibility, more options, and they'll get to work faster thanks to Smart Track, thanks to this LRT line, and thanks to the subway system that is now supported by the Provincial NDP, the Provincial Progressive Conservative Party, the Provincial Liberal Party, as well as the federal Liberals, the federal NDP, and the federal Conservatives. So I think this combination finally brings an equity to Scarborough that we've been waiting for a long, long time. Nobody's fault. Scarborough has developed last. The downtown core, Yonge and Eglinton, Yonge and Shepherd, Yonge and Finch. There are many other places for many reasons that have intensified before Scarborough has, that have been built out before Scarborough, that have been able to attract the office investment that brings with them tens of thousands of jobs. While Scarborough was losing tens of thousands of jobs after many free trade agreements and I'll call it globalization of production, where the good middle-class jobs that we used to have, the van plants and the car plants that we used to have in Scarborough, all closed down. So we exist in a city where everything is not the same. We have an agenda item later on today called the Scarborough Waterfront Trail. We all know that the Toronto Waterfront Trail sort of dead ends at the Balmy Beach Club, then goes up to Kingston Road. When you're on Kingston Road, you actually can't see Lake Ontario, yet once you get to Scarborough, you're on a road with your 8-year-old kids on your bicycle on Kingston Road, which is also called Highway 2, trying to find Lake Ontario. You can't find it. So on this agenda today, when we invest the $2 billion in this project that we need to invest, when we invest the money in the Scarborough Waterfront Trail, we will finally, decades after amalgamation, 200 years, I guess, since people first settled this area, bring this city together and connect us so that people who live in downtown Toronto can get on a bike, bicycle out to the Scarborough Bluffs for a picnic, go through the Meadowway, the hydro quarters, out to the Toronto Zoo and the New Rouge National Park, actually take the subway from Yonge and Bloor out to the Scarborough Town Centre, will actually work in an office tower. Not just one office tower, but office tower after office tower after office tower. As a local representative in that area for 15 years, as somebody who was working for the former Scarborough Budget Chief for 9 years out in that area, I've heard over and over and over again from the people who own those lands, from the investors and the people who own the office towers, we can't compete with downtown Toronto. We're too far away. We are not an attractive place for investment right now because we are too far away. Large companies don't want us to build 40 stories of office towers over here because it's more attractive to do it in downtown Toronto. And I'm happy for downtown Toronto, but I actually think some of my downtown colleagues might agree with me that we almost have a hyper-development or overdevelopment of some parts of the city, whereas other parts of the city are going underdeveloped. So I hope with the motions that we move today, we will move forward with this project. And when all of my colleagues who tell me over and over and over again how much they don't support the subway project, but they actually support the LRT project, I hope when it actually comes time to vote to invest money in Scarborough, Your words will be the same, your actions will be the same as your words.
Thank
I
you.
hope no one will say to us later on, you know what, I always said I support an LRT in Scarborough. Now that I have to actually make a financial commitment, I'm not going to support
Okay,
you.
Councillor DeBeer.
Thank you.
We're supposed to break at 6, so I was trying to. We'll vote.
The item before we.
Yes, yes. Okay, so we just have one motion. If we can put that on the yeah, just to extend to finish the voting, all in favor, carried. Okay, so we just have the one motion by Councillor Matlow. Yes, Councillor DeBeer.
And out of order. But I think going back to the Toronto Transit Commission Scarborough Rapid Transit Environmental Project 2010 is the exact same thing. That's rejecting the subway and going back to the Councillor Matlow proposal. So I would ask that you rule this out of order. It's cancelling the Scarborough subway. Councillor Matlow will tell you that. Matlow. Councillor Matlow will tell you how low this motion is and that it does in fact delete the subway.
Councillor Deliremaker. Can I see that?
Yeah, it goes back to a 2010 agreement that excluded.
Huh? What? Yeah. Yes. So 1A is out of order as well. So on the item, okay, Councillor Matlow's challenging me again. Recorded vote. Yeah. Recorded vote. Yes, I'm being challenged. You have it before you, Councillor Davis. Can you put it on the screen? Yeah. We're voting on the challenge, Councillor Davis. No, Councillor Davis.
Councillor Davis, please.
Councillor Mahavik, please.
Councillor DeBeermaker, please. We're in the middle of a vote.
Councillor Mahavik, please.
Councillor Mahavik, thank you.
The chair is upheld, 27 to 11.
Okay, on the item, recorded vote. Yeah, we're voting on the executive report.
Councillor Perruzza, please. Councillor Ajamari, please.
Councillor Mahavik, please.
Councillor Davis, please.
The item is adopted, 35 to 3.
Okay, we'll now recess 6:35. Members of council, can I please have you come to your seats? Members of council, can I please have you come to the council chambers? Okay, here we are. Are we okay? Yes? Okay, thank you. This meeting is now resumed. Before the recess, City Council completed the mayor's first key item, the mayor's second key item, which is item EX 34.2 and on the Toronto Senior Strategy, and that item will be considered with item EX 34.3 on implementing tenants first, creating a seniors housing unit at Toronto Community Housing, and transitioning towards a seniors housing and service in the city. Before we begin those items, I would take the release of member holds. Councillor Davis.
You know, I think probably Councillor Robinson's not in the room. I will hold off on that for now.
Councillor Holliday.
Thank you, Speaker. I'm just going to find the page. Working
What
hard
page?
here, but I have an item to release, just with a recorded vote. Top of page 12, TE 32.67, traffic control signals, Mortimer Avenue and Dewhurst Boulevard North.
Okay. On that page 12, top of page 12, T 32.67, Councillor Holliday is releasing. Recorded vote.
Councillor Doucette, please. Councillor McMahon, when you're seated, please.
The item is adopted 23-2.
Councillor Cressy.
Thank you, Speaker. On page 4, item EX 34.21, refining eligibility criteria for creative facilities, I can release that.
On page 4, EX 34.21, Councillor Cressy is releasing. All in favor? Carried. Councillor Davis.
I see that Councillor Robinson is now in the room, and I wondered if I could release AU 12.2. Okay,
Not
then
ready.
I'll hold it.
Councillor Campbell, do you not have one? No, but I was hoping. No? All right. So we'll now go to the mayor's second key item, EX 34.1 and EX 34.2. Do we have questions? No questions? The mayor's key item, EX 34.1 and EX 30. Oh, I'm sorry, EX 34.2 and EX 34.3. The Toronto Senior Strategy. We do have questions. Councillor Fletcher.
Yes, I do. I think I was a little surprised that we're mixing up the two things, but I guess we have our own internal senior strategy. So in looking at all of the recommendations for EX, I guess it's 34, the seniors portfolio that's currently in TCHC, as part of Tenants First, there was a determination in the report that it would migrate. Is that correct?
Through the Speaker, I'm sorry, Councillor, that
That it would, right now it's part of the larger Toronto Community Housing, that it would be hived off as a standalone or move closer to the city, because these vulnerable seniors have suffered a number of problems, actually, since 2008 as part of the larger corporation.
So through the Speaker, we're approaching this on two tracks. The first, in response to the housing condition or the lived experience for seniors in TCHC. We are working with the LIN and TCHC and community partners to create a better service model to meet the needs of those seniors. That work will happen regardless of any directions in this report. Along with that, we are looking at the governance model, and what the report is recommending, staff advice, is that we have deeper due diligence to do before we're in a position to recommend to council any shifts in the portfolio. That's the intention behind the transition team recommended in the report. We would come back early in 2019 with a firm recommendation on how to proceed. That could be to move the housing units, the 14,000 units out of TCHC. It could be equally to leave them there with a stronger direct city oversight and agreement. We haven't done the due diligence to make the ultimate determination in terms of advice.
So Tenants First didn't have a vision for that it would be somehow separated out from the core business of TCHC.
What the recommendation...
These are coming from MTHA or MTHCL, most of these seniors units, correct?
That's correct. The recommendation before council is to direct TCHC to create a standalone unit reporting directly to the CEO and president within the TCHC organization. That is something we would advise to help us with that new service model. It may also be a step to a further move. We would come back with that advice in 2019.
And so I've always thought of it as a bit of an interim model so I'd like to make that clear in the recommendations. Would you have any objections to that?
Through the Speaker, not at all. It is in fact an interim step. What the ultimate step is, we have yet to set.
And what is the increased city oversight in this new governance model, in the interim governance model? How do you foresee that increased city oversight now, tomorrow, once we've done this?
We in fact are working with TCHC and the local health integration network on creating a new service model.
I meant just regular management of the seniors units.
And the creation of a standalone unit within TCHC will help facilitate the development of that service model.
But how will the city have greater oversight of the standalone seniors model, which was one of the goals of the Tenants First?
With a standalone unit within TCHC, the city's ability to provide oversight from a service system manager perspective will be enhanced because we'll be actually having 2 conversations with TCHC, one about the general stock and one about the senior stock.
And through whom?
That the service system manager role resides with Shelter Support and Housing, working very closely with the Tenants First team in the development of the program model.
And what will your criteria or checklist be to decide how to finally arbitrate on the final model?
There are a number of areas of risk that we have identified. Certainly, we need to work through a number of issues with labor partners. We need to work through a number of financial issues. That's the due diligence that we'll be doing over the next 9 months to report back early in the new term of council.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Davis.
I'm sorry, I'm going to go over the same ground because these are the same questions I was struggling with, and I'm still not clear. So there's 2 reports with 2 complementary recommendations. One is the senior strategy, which says very clearly that recommendation 1 is to initiate a process to develop a seniors housing and services entity at the city, dedicated to taking a service system management approach. So when you say at the city, what does that mean?
Both reports identify the need to enhance the city's ability to plan for the growing numbers of seniors, both in terms of housing and in terms of other city services.
I do understand that, but with this wording, I'm trying to understand what direction it takes us in. So is it at the city means within the city structure?
Ultimately, yes, it is about the city management of its own services for seniors, including housing.
And long-term care is in there too?
Long-term care is absolutely a part of that conversation, yes.
So the long-term care and housing coordination of services, planning, policy, I completely get. They're both within our jurisdiction.
Through the Speaker, along with the 20 other senior services that the city funds and delivers.
Sure, and I see those. The second report, which is EX 34.3, recommends that you design and implement a new integrated service model for seniors housing to promote aging in place, better quality of life, and successful tenancies for seniors in TCHC. So this also establishes a new and separate management structure within TCHC.
Correct.
So one says within the city, and the other says within TCHC. So I've struggled to figure out where are we, what is this entity, and are we talking about the same thing between these 2 reports?
Through the Speaker, the first is an interim step. So creating the standalone business unit within TCHC is a clear recommendation before Council to give direction to TCHC to do that.
Okay, that's your recommendation 1.
We will be working internally within the city because we need to look at our city structure and how we're organized at the same time. We will then, once the unit's established in TCHC, once we've done our work internally, we will come back to Council with a recommendation with respect to the next step.
And the next step could be what?
So on page
not an arm's length agency.
No. So on page 13 of the report, there's actually a graphic that gives you the continuum of the second report, the Tenants First report.
Yes.
At one end of the continuum is where we are a service system manager with oversight through contracts. At the other end is where we're directly delivering everything. The work before staff that council will be directing us to do is to undertake the due diligence, the model design, to come back with the hard advice to council about which end of this continuum we should be headed towards. But at the end of the day,
many of these services are funded by the province that fall clearly within provincial jurisdiction. So are we contemplating taking on, because there was a motion, I guess Councillor Mihevc moved a motion, to look at potentially taking on service system management for long-term care. Is that part of this as well?
Through the Speaker, no. And in fact, this report is recommending that we have to take a look at our own services first before we would ever give any advice to council about taking on anyone else's responsibility. That's the scope of this report, is existing city program. Okay, so the first step is to create a new unit for housing within TCHC. Correct. My final question is, why are we picking Greenwood Towers as the site?
Okay, that was your last question.
There are others. We are looking at that as a pilot for the service delivery model that we're working with the LIN and TCHC on.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To Mr. Brillinger. So this report addresses issues of housing, of finance, talks about dental provisions, active living fares, but we just approved all kinds of allocations for community groups to help at-risk youth and so on, and in impoverished neighborhoods. There's nothing in here, correct me if I'm wrong, there's nothing in here that addresses the issue of loneliness that seniors feel and isolation. And we have an entire recreation department in the City of Toronto, and I thought I would see something here that would address that. A way to get seniors out of their homes and get them actively engaged.
The Senior Strategy 2.0 does talk about active living centers. And the city is involved with the province in the expansion of that program. There were a number of new centres funded. We are also working with provincial colleagues and local health integration network colleagues to figure out how we pull those investments together, leverage the active living centres, potentially in TCHC communities to address exactly that.
So, but and I get that we want to help those who are at the lower income levels, but lonely seniors, whether they're middle income or lower income or higher income, would you not agree that they're all still in a depressed state, and they also require our service?
They certainly require services, and that's why we fund elderly person centers, active living centers across the city and have done for some time.
Can you tell me a little bit about how many we have and where they operate?
I will get the number for you. I don't have it off the top of my head. I do know our investment equals the provincial investment in the City of Toronto at this point in time. I believe it's in the neighborhood of 100 centres.
So given the demographic picture that's portrayed, which of course is factual, a growing seniors population, do you think that this goes far enough in addressing that very important issue of, really, it's seniors' mental health? Do you think that this goes far enough, or could we be doing more, or should we be channeling more efforts? And really, it's a manpower issue. It's about getting people out of their homes and getting them into a sort of a social network.
Through the Speaker, the recommendations in the two reports, I believe, position us to be doing the system-level thinking, so we're making smart investments. We will likely need more resources as time goes on, but we need to be very strategic and intentional about where those investments are occurring.
So I would like your comment. I'm just going to refer to the survey. I think that the survey, I imagine it's somewhat helpful. It paints a little bit of a portrayal, but you didn't ask, a question of happiness. Are you happy with your existence? Are you happy with your life? Are you happy with city services? What is your satisfaction level with? Do you think that that would have been a worthwhile question? If you don't, be candid. I can take it.
Through the Speaker, I would, we didn't include that kind of question. We did work with Dr. Samir, who's the provincial lead, Sinha on this work, and the local health integration network. So we were aware of health issues in undertaking the work. I don't think we were clear on what we would do with the answer to that kind of question. I think that may be something we dig into more deeply as we go along.
Okay, so my last question is a little bit about the way the report is written on the first page. It refers to people living with privilege. So my mother came to the City of Toronto when she was 17. She was raised in small town Ontario, and had no university education, lived above a store for her first 17 years, got a job in Toronto, eventually raised a family. Would you say that she was a woman of privilege?
The senior strategy, and actually any work that we do, looks at needs within the population relative to other parts of the population. So in fact, an individual who has economic impact or independence, access to economic resources, would have privilege that many others don't have. So in that context.
That was your last question. Councillor Cole.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to get a sense of the level of consultation that would have happened as this plan was developed with the, I'm assuming, more than 25,000 seniors in TCH with our tenants.
Through the Speaker, so you're referring to 34.3?
Yes.
There has been a tenant advisory group involved with Tenants First from the very beginning. The process to create that group was very open. We worked with TCHC. Many of the members of the Tenant Advisory Committee actually were at Executive Committee in on previous reports. Staff have also held a number of meetings in different TCHC communities. We have also worked with the existing TCHC tenant engagement bodies and done our best to make all stakeholders, most of all tenants, but also labor partners, aware of any recommendations coming forward.
And who's seniors' voice, and how do they participate in the consultation process?
We've also done consultations with targeted at those buildings to ensure that we are reaching that group as well.
Sorry, who is seniors' voice?
Oh, it's a TCHC advocacy group of seniors tenants in TCHC, and there is a member on the tenant advisory group.
That advocacy group is still being engaged, had been engaged through this process and still is being engaged?
That's correct.
And will continue to be as we take next steps?
Absolutely. One of the tenets of the Tenants First work is that we're true to the name and talking to tenants before council.
Just a question, sorry, going on a bit of a different tangent. Building in my ward, 855 Roselawn, classic story of what was not officially a seniors building, but a seniors building that then the demographics changed dramatically, and there's significant issues now in the building with a kind of a mixed population of tenants. One of the things we've identified is there's a preamble to this question. There's a lot of agencies underneath the LIN who are supposedly serving this building, but it's hard to determine whether they're actually doing anything. How do we better link the agencies that are funded and supposed to be serving buildings or areas and the actual work they're conducting in these buildings?
That is very much, through the Speaker, that is very much the focus of our conversation with the LIN. Both the LIN and city staff understand that we need to do a better job of identifying who is funded to provide services at a specific address, and how the coordination and the communication with tenants and TCHC is happening in those buildings. That's exactly the model development we're in.
And is it the case that some of those agencies would be funded to serve a specific address, whereas others it's geographic based, where that building may fall into their catchment area?
That's correct. There's many agreements that the LIN has with service providing agencies. We are in the conversation with the LIN to figure out, do we have the most effective organization for service delivery in place?
So would the intent be to kind of more strongly tether those service agencies to specific TCH building addresses as opposed to their just geographic catchment areas?
That is one of the goals, and in reference to an earlier question about loneliness, instead of having staff from 4 different agencies in the same building, to try to have consistent staff in one building from one agency, so that service client relationship is much clearer and stronger.
And have we ever gone through almost like an asset mapping exercise where a local councillor or a resident or tenant could point to and see clearly at least the agencies who purport to serve the building they live in or the building where their constituents live? Does that exist, and has that exercise been carried out?
That's certainly a part of the model development. As we're looking at different pilots, we would be undertaking that kind of review.
So at some point there will be an easily accessible source of data where you could at least, whether they're serving it effectively or not, we can see where they're supposed to be serving.
Yes.
Okay, so some shaming then could take place if need be.
Well, we will certainly ensure that there's transparency in terms of who is serving what buildings.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. Next on the list to question staff is Councillor Fargadakis. Oops.
Speaker. So through you to staff, I just wanted to know, is there some rule that precludes like 2 different agencies under the LIN from actually serving the same building if their service isn't identical but rather complementary?
Through the Speaker, no. In fact, it's the opposite issue that we're dealing with, where we have 6, 7, or 8 agencies providing services to different residents, or in fact sometimes the same resident, just different services.
Oh, that's interesting, because I had heard something to the contrary, but I'm glad that I have this opportunity to ask you that, and you have clarified for me. My next question, and I'm not sure if it's to you, but I'll direct it to the Deputy Speaker, and it can be directed to the appropriate staff, but I'm just wondering about fire safety, physical safety in some of our buildings, in particular in the seniors buildings. And I'm just wondering, what role does city staff play outside of the fire department, like through SSHA or SDFA? Are they in those discussions with Toronto Community Housing and the fire department when we do these audits of, or attempt to do audits of some of our properties?
So if the question's in relation to SSHA and SDFA, both TCHC and Toronto Fire keep us in the loop in terms of the efforts to address those issues in the buildings. We're not directly involved.
Sorry, I'm just going to ask, does fire staff want to respond as well?
Yeah, certainly. Through the chair, as our colleague said, TFS staff over the last number of years, Councillor, has certainly worked very closely with SSHA on this file, and as well as our new chair, Ms. Milsom, and the new board with TCH. So certainly the service level in terms of fire safety inspection, Councillor, since May of 16 has increased. As you're aware, we have committed to conduct full inspections of, it originally came out of the Nielsen Road fire. So as of May 16, every seniors TCH building has received a full fire safety inspection, has been pre-planned. We are now in the process of developing and working on increasing our public education level. But certainly in terms of the inspections and making sure the building's compliant with the fire code, there is an absolute connection between SSHA and TCH.
And then just wondering if, like, we continue to have, for example, in a seniors building, elevator issues in seniors buildings, in a high-rise, and it's been reported, the fire department's been there, I've been there, for example, and continue to experience issues with an elevator. I'm just wondering, where does the city come in on this, since it is our facility as a city? I'm just wondering, at what point are we going to get an elevator fixed? Like, what is it going to take? Since we have, these issues and they've been inspected, and we have identified a number of problems, I'm just wondering, like, what needs to happen and how?
So again, through the chair, the issue of elevator fire safety actually was a resulted in a provincial technical advisory committee that was struck last year. The City of Toronto was asked to sit on that committee. We have provided comments. I know there was a draft regulation that unfortunately died on the order paper the last day of provincial government. So we certainly had input into that, Councillor. The recommendations certainly were an improvement in light of what the limited powers we do have under the fire code now for elevators. It's that split between the Technical Standards Safety Authority, which has installation and maintenance, and then certainly our role under the elevator requirements. So unfortunately, the regulation did die. We're hoping whichever government comes back, it does adopt it, and then we would enforce those new regulations.
Okay, thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Next question is Councillor Nunziata.
Thank you. Just a question to staff. Now, as you're aware, at 1901 Western Road, I have the York West Active Senior Centre that have been there for years, and I've been working with them, and they're doing exactly what we're recommending in this report. So can you tell me, and you're familiar with them, Chris, so would you tell me what they're doing at 1901 Western Road would be a model for other seniors' buildings in the city?
Through the Deputy Speaker, yes, that address is a very good example of where we have a seniors active living centre funded by both the city and the province, providing services easily accessible to the tenants of that building and to the local community, because it's important in this conversation that it's not just about meeting the needs of those seniors in their own building, but encouraging the interaction with their local community. It's a very good example of where the model has developed naturally. That's what we're looking to recreate.
So I think it would be a good idea if we invite members of council to take a tour, so they can see exactly what we've been doing in Ward 11 and what can be done citywide.
It is certainly worth a look, yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Nunziata. Last call for questions of staff. Seeing no questions of staff, we'll go to request to speak. And the first on our speakers list is Councillor Matlow. Oh, my apologies. Here we go. And I'll start your time in just a minute.
Thank you. So I have a motion. It's just an amendment to recommendations 9 and 15 to support what is a provincially supported initiative to create more cohesive communities that support social inclusion, such as the Oasis program in Kingston. This is a funded program by the provincial government. And just to extend a little bit more on that, there are models that we're learning about, such as Oasis, and it's going to be tested in 400 Walmer in Councillor Mahavic's ward soon, where there's catering and there's there's opportunities to create community. One of the biggest concerns that I've had as your seniors advocate is social isolation, loneliness. There are far too many seniors in our city today who are not included in our community. And what we know to be true is that anyone who is feeling lonely and isolated, their longevity is impacted, their quality of life, their health today is impacted. And that's not anything we'd want for our own parents or anyone we love. So to support communities that can foster that sense of cohesion and opportunity for people to stay engaged in their own lives along with their own community, I think is critically important. It's something that we should support. I also want to acknowledge, if I may have, Madam Speaker, I'm having a little trouble hearing right now. Do you mind just...
Councillor Perks, please.
Oh, it's not just, it's sort of collectively.
Okay.
The work that we did on the initial senior strategy, I thought was incredibly important and incredibly substantive. And we were able to address roughly 99% of all of those recommendations. And then the next phase of the strategy has really been sort of a living document as we've worked with a remarkable group of people, whether it be the Toronto Seniors Forum, the Accountability Table, the expert panel, Dr. Samir Sinha. But I want to point out somebody in particular who wasn't able to be here today, but she has taken this on as a labor of love. And I speak to our staff lead, Andrea Austin. I may be Toronto Seniors Advocate. I'm appointed by you to advocate for this initiative to move forward. But no one has done more hard work on this to really bring it together than Andrea. She actually made a point of ensuring that we would go out to every single ward in the entire city to hear from seniors, their caregivers, and others to ensure that their voices were heard and they were co-authors of this strategy. We also have, through the Accountability Table, made sure that we've had, started with roughly 13, it's gone to about 60 different stakeholders, primary stakeholders across the city, to come together interdivisionally and through various sectors to hold our feet to the fire so that we'd continue to do better on our strategy. We've been recognized by the provincial government, we've been recognized by the World Health Organization on this initiative, and I'm very proud of the work that we've done, and I really appreciate your ongoing support as a council. Moving forward, I think it's really important that we eventually arrive at creating a city division that can offer senior services to contribute to an age-friendly city in a far more holistic and comprehensive way, so that we don't have all these different silos and different departments and different staff working on different things that don't all work together towards a common goal. And the reason I say that is because we often talk about groups in our city as they, and we've referred to seniors that way, they. But they are quickly becoming us. In the next 20 years, 1 in 5 of us are going to be over the age of 65, and that demographic is going to continue to grow. So what I really respect about the work that we're doing together is that rather than reacting to a change in demographics and a change in our society that we need to address, we're working proactively to make sure that we create an age-friendly society. And what does that mean? It means that we're supporting seniors, but by doing so, we're also supporting young parents who are pushing a stroller and want an accessible city. We're supporting a middle-aged person in a wheelchair who wants a caring and respectful and inclusive and accessible city. We're supporting all of us together. So I really just wanted to acknowledge, and by the way, and Chris Brillinger too, I should never forget Chris for the leadership that he's provided, along with our acting city manager and everyone else who's worked together towards supporting this goal. So thank you very much, everyone, and I encourage you to support both items because I believe that we're going in the right direction and we're doing that together. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you, Speaker. I just have 2 quick motions based on, one of them based on my questions of Mr. Brillinger. And just to make it a little clearer that this is an interim seniors housing unit and that we're on a pathway. We're just figuring out what we're going to do. And hearing Councillor Cole and listening to Councillor Fragadakis and the questions, we really do have to grapple with the seniors portfolio and the attention that they get, and being able to ensure that it's being run well. Much of it, or a lot of it, got contracted out in 2008, seemingly thinking that was easier. And unfortunately, after that, that's when Mr. Gosling died. And I know Councillor Fragadakis spoke at executive about the 2 deaths, the fire deaths at Greenwood Towers. Which
you have more than one motion?
I'm sorry. I have a second motion. Thank you, Speaker. You're so good. and that is to request a status update on recommendation number 4 in July. And I'll come back to that in a second. So the first one is just, what are we doing? How well are we doing? Let's get this unit together. It is interim, and I was pleased to hear Mr. Brillinger say that it would allow the city to have a little bit more oversight. That has been the goal of, as far as I know, Tenants First and the city staff, our deputy city manager and now our acting city manager, and many councillors, that we are much clearer on what Toronto Community Housing is doing, particularly when we're dealing with seniors. And as I said, 2008, big changes were made in dealing with seniors, and units contracted out services were sent to the seniors building with the thinking that they were easier to deal with. And we've had a lot of problems because there are many vulnerable seniors. I'm not going to hold my breath for the LHINs. I can't hold my breath for the LHINs because at the Hope Shelter, and our mayor came to announce that the LHINs would be providing funding for a nurse practitioner for those in the shelter for our new model, and I think we were there. It was very cold, Mr. Mayor. It might have been February, and the money was on the way. There is still not a penny in the model for a health service provider at our shelter, despite the fact of it being our new model and the LHINs saying they were going to provide that. So let's not put too many eggs in that basket. We have to drive this ourselves. And the second thing I want to do is just have a report back in July, before we go on our hiatus leading through to the next January, of for those of us returning and those of us not coming back, but we should know exactly how many housing providers might be able to take advantage of some of these homes. Many of them are actually ready to be inhabited. I remember a number of years ago, Wigwaman, which is a native Aboriginal housing provider, was able to take advantage of a whole number of single-family homes. That's their model of operation. There are many people and many housing providers, that is their model. They use single-family homes. EQ Home uses single-family homes. Instead Co-op uses single-family homes. Wigwaman uses single-family homes. There are a lot of people that do. We are not very good at the business of single-family homes, so we have a lot of people on the waiting list, a lot of people that could go quickly, and I want to make sure we're driving this to get people that need them in them and to fix them up as quickly as possible. So I hope you'll support those two quick amendments. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ajamari.
Thank you, Speaker. I have a couple of motions. The first is that as the sole shareholder, we direct the board by directing the CEO to enable the gradual transition of Downsview Acres, which is located at Wilson and Jane, into a redesignated as a seniors housing, which it was at one point. We have 215 bachelor units in this building out of 294 units. We have families living in these bachelor units, which is simply not a credible housing setup for in any definition. I think it's time to redress what we've done and correct the error of having designated 215 bachelor units as family units. I think that it's time to return the building to its original intent and that it be an actual seniors building. I wouldn't normally do this as a one-off, but I'm doing it because the need is so great here right now, and the problems are so terrible that we're using an enormous amount of resources to try to correct the terrific underhousing that exists at this building right now, insofar as families are concerned. The second part of my motion, I've been asked to move by staff, and that has to do with confidentiality, a confidentiality clause. So I'm hoping to get council support on this. As I said, it's a local issue with ramifications regionally. It's an issue that we really need resolved. We've been having this issue for the past 10 years in the Downsview community, and I think that now would be a good time to start to redress. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We do have a question for you, Councillor Cole. 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I hear what you're saying, and I experienced it in a very, you almost described exactly 855 Roselawn, which I described in my speaking notes. Would you accept it as a friendly amendment to include that building in your motion too?
You're going the wrong way. It's the other way. I got one too.
I have one.
Oh, dear. Not you again. Councillor, I understand. I'll have to say no, and I understand now that there will be a flood. There will be a flood. I understand.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I owed it to my community to do this.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Speaker. I read these reports with great interest, and I have to say, I am so pleased that these reports are before us. I was going to say it's about time, but I thought that sounded a little cheeky, and probably should have said it more eloquently than that. But it really is time that we stepped forward into addressing the the growing challenges of a larger and larger proportion of our population being seniors. And we do have to start looking at the role of both TCHC and the buildings that house predominantly seniors and the services that are provided to them. And I'm very glad at the time, and I voted for the Tenants First report specifically because I believe that we do need to do better for this specific set of tenants. We are, as everyone knows, the largest landlord. We probably have the largest seniors population of any institution, certainly in the province, and we have a stake in making sure that seniors are housed properly and they are provided with the supports that they need to remain independent and to assist families in navigating the system that is so complex right now. I would hope, and I'm sure I went through the chart pretty quickly in the senior strategy, and but I trust that Create TO is in here somewhere as well. Because as we look at creating what will be hubs, essentially, we may find that we can't create them necessarily on site, but we could provide a campus of services that was envisioned originally when we were looking at Kipling Acres, that we would have a much more robust array of supports and systems. So I hope that if we're going to develop a citywide plan, starting with those units that belong to us and the services that belong to us, and then figure out the other pieces, how they can be brought in to a more coordinated approach to services, then I think we have to be looking system-wide, and I know that that's a role we've given Create TO in its new role. So I will be supporting it. One of the frustrations that I have had is that these complex situations of tenants in particular, not just TCH, but in TCH, when we stepped back from the more activist role of TCH as more than a landlord, since then it's been very hard to get the kind of supports we need for those seniors that have multiple issues to contend with, everything from bed bugs to the ability to care for themselves. So my biggest worry is that once again we're entering into an area where there is joint jurisdiction, and that sometimes when we want to solve these issues, we take on much broader responsibilities without sufficient funds. And without sufficient funds as well, I'm concerned there is one staff person, and I hope Mr. Brillinger is listening. I have a great deal of concern about funding this properly. So I would urge you, when the budget comes, to please put in more than one staff person. Like, this is a huge, huge undertaking. It's complicated, multi-divisional, multi-agency and city. So it's going to have to take someone with tremendous support and with authority to move this thing forward. So please make sure that we have the resources to actually make this project a success.
Thank you. Councillor Troisi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I am delighted to see this report, given that I have 8 seniors buildings in Ward 28. So I'm pleased to support the recommendations of the Seniors Strategy and the Tenants First Seniors Housing Unit report. Older Torontonians often face challenges in securing and maintaining good housing, but seniors are disproportionately affected by poverty, facing increased vulnerability to precarious housing and safety issues. Creating a new and separate seniors unit with an integrated service model gives the necessary focus to seniors housing within the vast and complex TCHC portfolio. Ward 28 has a large number of TCHC seniors buildings, and our communities of older people need the increased supports and resources that will be provided by the restructuring. There are concrete actions in the report that I can see will get results for our residents. First, even within Ward 28, our senior buildings are spread out across large distances. Staff support for residents is limited due to being stretched out across many different buildings. Restructuring to allow staff to work on site in fewer buildings will allow more interactions, better monitoring, and effective problem solving of health and property issues. Second, the current division between staff that deal with services and tenancy and staff that deal with property management at senior buildings have led to inefficient reporting and communication of on-site issues that fall outside the specific responsibility. Creating an integrated service model for this portfolio will provide the structure and training for staff so that residents have fewer hoops to jump through to get results. The integrated service model moves us towards real wraparound service for our vulnerable seniors. I am pleased that this model commits to creating the supports to implement the program, dedicating staff support services and resources that will connect seniors to healthcare and networks. As well, the development of senior hubs in our TCHC buildings is an important step, bringing better services to our older residents. Embedding these hubs in local buildings through partnerships with other governments and organizations will help serve our TCHC residents as well as all other seniors in need. I also want to highlight one recommendation in senior strategies that are particularly I'm happy to see. Recommendation 27, which focus on creating Toronto Police Services training around raising awareness of aging-related issues. It also aims to create additional capacity for public relation campaigns on improving the safety and security of our seniors. This is an issue that has been ongoing with our seniors, and their safety is really a priority. I'd like to thank City staff and TCHC staff for their work on these important recommendations, and I also want to acknowledge the importance of the TCHC engagement process in creating these plans. Through their lived experience, tenants are our most important planning resource. Engaging the tenants, the advisory panel, and the seniors accountability table is critical to creating housing that works for communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Perruzza.
Thank you so much, Speaker. I have a motion which is on the screen there. It's sort of self-explanatory, and the reason I do this, Speaker, is this particular building was built and was a former Metropolitan Toronto Seniors building. It was built, you know, with bachelors, with a common room, you know, a very nice room, rec room, to do seniors programming and all those kinds of things. And currently, its dynamic has changed. And while there continue to be an overwhelming majority of seniors who live in the building, their quality of life and the dynamic that they have enjoyed or that they enjoyed prior to the building being rolled into the into the entire mix of housing has really changed. And all I'm asking is that Toronto Community Housing take a look at that. And it's nothing new. This is a direction that has been basically supported in the past and approved in the past, and it's really up to Toronto Community Housing. But I would like for the city to sort of lend its weight behind the initiative in asking for that, because Speaker, as you know, the reason why we're doing what we're doing and the reason why we have the report that's in front of us today is that we all fundamentally believe that the quality of life for our seniors is nowhere near where it could be. And people is sort of in the latter years of their life, we should find a way to make their existence somewhat more pleasurable. And what this has done, what this change in policy has done, has actually put them into a position where we have made their quality of life much worse, and we didn't have to do that, so I'm hoping that people will support this motion, and we can take a look at this building one more time, the Northwood Apartments there on Keel Street. Thank you so much, Speaker.
Thank you. Councillor Matlow has a question for you.
Madam Speaker, I would ask the same thing of Councillor Peruzza's. I would ask respectfully to my friends Councillor Ajameri and Councillor Cole and anyone else who would move sort of an ad hoc motion today with regard to specific buildings in their wards. First of all, I don't doubt your sincerity and your advocacy for the residents there, no doubt. But have you discussed the consequences and the impacts of if this motion was approved today with staff to understand, does this in particular building merit it? Will it have impacts on the waiting list for others to access? Has this been really thought out, or is this more of a sort of something needs to be done, cry for help kind of motion?
Yeah. I think fundamentally it's all of those things, and I really wanted to take up, sort of not have my time take up more than 2 minutes, and I try to keep my speech under 2 minutes, as you know, so that people wouldn't say, hey, Bruce is taking up time over here at council. But yes, absolutely. With the staff over the years, this has been an ongoing issue, and there has been ongoing dialogue around this. So what happened is this, Councillor Matlow.
Yeah.
So these buildings, sort of when they were transferred into the Toronto Community Housing portfolio of buildings, this came from Metro. It was a seniors building. It was exclusively a seniors complex. It housed seniors. It's fundamentally built for seniors.
Are the preponderance still seniors today?
Pardon?
Are the preponderance of residents there?
The majority of the residents are still seniors, correct. But bringing in a small minority that mixes it up in some of these neighborhoods, like sort of this Jane Finch, it creates a dynamic which makes the livelihood, which makes life for seniors very, very difficult. i.e. drugs, prostitution. It brings in elements into the lifestyle of seniors that becomes very, very difficult for them to deal with. So what you have these seniors who basically now are forced to, sort of go back into their apartments, bar the door, and even though there's maybe one or two people in the on the floor that create those difficulties. Pardon?
Okay.
Boy, I didn't really understand the nest I'd be stepping on. What I'm really
I did want to keep my time very brief.
Councillor Matlow, that was your last question. Sorry.
Okay.
Councillor Cole to speak.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Here's my motion. I hold it in my hand. It can't be placed on the screen because I didn't move it. I'll just speak to, so my motion was going to be very similar to Councillor Perruzza's and Councillor Ajamari's, and speak to 855 Roselawn. A building that has exactly the same challenges, largely a seniors building for decades. A few noble programs like Street to Homes and others who put tenants in there with no supports, who completely changed the complexion of the building to the point where, as an example, this past summer, we've had 3 suicide attempts, 2 tragically successful, numerous drug dealers who have been arrested or not on many floors. We found a puppy mill recently. We just, as a building that is in a situation where quite literally seniors will not participate in any of the programs. They won't leave their units. Unit takeovers are rampant. Prostitution is rampant in the building. And this was at one point, or really for decades, a quiet seniors building by every description and account. And right now, we're dealing with the reality of suicides, puppy mills, and prostitution in what was, again, a fairly stable seniors building. And so I'm not moving the motion. I expect that this is something that I certainly have already been advocating for and trying to get the LINs involved, trying to get TCH involved, and we have to do more. And that's why my questions were about, how do we actually hold these agencies to account who purport to serve these buildings? You see lots of lists. Sadly, when 3 people tried to kill themselves in this building, we had lots of people deploy and big lists on the wall of all the people the agencies who said they serve this building. I hadn't heard of half of them ever, and I'm in that building a lot. The tenants in that building hadn't heard of half of them. And so somewhere we have failed, and we failed dramatically, and we're not serving these seniors in any way or shape or form. And if any of them had the ability to be here, they would certainly, or at executive, which they would not go to, they would tell you that. They would tell you about the fear they have of living in the building, the way they're harassed, the way they're terrorized on a regular basis. And so we have to do better. I trust in staff that this report will lead us to that place. And I hope that happens sooner than probably some of these people have been waiting for a long time, sooner than that, and that we start to see changes in buildings like this that kind of slip through and they're in the cracks. They're not seniors buildings technically, but they have all those needs. They've got to be treated that way. They've got to be treated better. And by every measure, we are failing our tenants in buildings like at 855 Roselawn. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Okay, so... Okay, we're going to have to move a motion then just to finish this item then. Councillor Holyday?
So moved. I'll move the motion.
Yeah, okay. Councillor Holyday to speak.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to express some concern with some of the motions that are amending the portfolio of buildings. We don't have the benefit of a staff report or advice on the appropriateness of this. I think if it was one thing if we had a request here to have a report back on the feasibility of adding some of these buildings to the seniors portfolio, but I'm not comfortable in supporting some of the motions that are written as they are today. It's like cherry picking, and I'm sure everybody in their ward has a building they'd love to see converted over, but having a bunch of buildings thrown out here into the mix is not the right way to do business, and it's not what the report says. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so let's... There was no motion, Councillor Ajamari, no motion. Okay. All right, we're voting. Councillor Ajamari, you only ask a question when there's a motion moved.
34.2, and then remember we have to vote on 3.
Yeah, yeah,
after.
yeah. So we're,
We've got 2 sets of motions. We have, number 1 is on 2, and the rest are on 3.
yeah. Okay, so we're voting on EX 34.2 first. And we'll put the first motion on the screen, moved by Councillor Matlow. Okay, that's on EX 34.2. On favor? Carried. Item is amended. On favor? Recorded vote.
Councillor DiGiorgio, please. Councillor McMahon. Councillor Wong-Tam. Members, we cancel the vote and restart it, so your buttons may be lit up. Councillor Doucette, please. Councillor Carmichael-Greb, thank you. Councillor Matlow, please. Councillor Kelly, Councillor Karagianis, and Councillor Thompson.
Councillor Pillion, please. Councillor Cole. Councillor Troisi, please.
Councillor Ajamari, please.
Item as amended carries unanimously, 35 in favor.
Okay, on EX 34.3, we have motion 2A by Councillor Fletcher. On favor? Carried. 2B by Councillor Fletcher. On favor? Carried. Motion 3 by Councillor Ajamari, recorded vote. You want to vote on 1 and 2 separately? Okay, on 1 first. We want to do the...
Councillor Perruzza, Councillor DiGiorgio, Councillor McMahon. Did we accidentally?
Yeah.
Members, we accidentally closed the vote early, so would you please revote? Councillor Kelly, please. Councillor Karagianis, Councillor Perruzza, Councillor Wong-Tam. Councillor Kelly, please.
Councillor De Bearmaker, please. Councillor Pillion, please. Councillor Grimes, please. Councillor Pillion, please.
Part 1 of the motion does not carry. The vote is 17 to 19.
On favor? Carried. Motion 4 by Councillor Perruzza. Recorded vote.
Councillor Layton, please. Councillor Perks, Councillor Davis.
Councillor Palacio, please.
Part 4 does not carry. The vote is 12 to 24.
Item is amended. On favor? Recorded. Okay, members of council, after we do this vote, there are some members' motion that we want to introduce before we recess.
Councillor Prusa, please. Councillor Wong-Tam, Councillor Layton. Councillor Perks. Councillor Matlow, please. Councillor Kelly.
Councillor Mahevic and Councillor Crawford, please.
The item as amended carries unanimously, 34 in favor.
Okay, we have some members' motion that we want to introduce now that we have over 30 members. Okay. Councillor Cole.
I have a member's motion to introduce. I believe this is reassigning Section 37 money in Oakwood Village, at Oakwood and Eglinton.
Okay, on favor, carried. Councillor Torcy?
Yep. Oh, yes, this is, yes, the daycare, yes. This motion is urgent in order to meet the Toronto local appeal body deadline to attend the hearing as a party.
On favor, carried. Councillor Matlow, you have two.
I move this for those reasons.
On favor, carried. You have another one.
For these other reasons. For that reason.
But we didn't hear you. What did you say?
I move it for that reason.
Okay. On favor, carried. Councillor Wong-Tam?
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I move this motion for the reasons stated on the screen.
On favor, carried. Councillor Cressy?
Thank you, Speaker. This concerns an AGCO matter. It's urgent as the filing for objections is on June 3rd.
On favor, carried. Councillor Cressy, you have another one.
Thank you, Speaker. This is urgent as any delay will impact the implementation of the expanded patio related to the King Street pilot.
Okay, on favor, carried. Councillor Robinson, you have two.
Okay.
You don't have to take your jacket off.
Okay, I got caught.
Oh.
Okay, so these are both T-Labs, and I'd ask that you support them.
Okay, on favor, carried. One more.
It's all about the seniors. Absolutely. Oh, no, no. Again,
on favor.
upholding the decision.
Carried. Pardon? Oh. Councillor Hart?
Nope.
You second the motion for Councillor Ainsley.
Yes, I did. Yes, I'd like to add that to the agenda, Speaker.
Okay, on favor?
Why is it urgent?
Carried.
Why is it urgent?
That's it. Councillor Ford. Councillor Mihevik, what's wrong? Councillor Ford, you have a motion to introduce the confirming bill?
Yes, Madam Speaker, I do. That leave be granted to introduce a bill to confirm to the point of the introduction of this motion the proceedings of City Council meeting 41 on May 22nd, 2018.
Shall leave be granted to introduce this bill? On favor, recorded vote.
Councillor Layton, Councillor Wong-Tam, Councillor McMahon, Councillor Perruzza, please. Councillor Karygiannis. Councillor Matlow, please. Councillor Shan, Councillor Matlow.
The motion to introduce the confirming bill carries unanimously, 35 in favor.
Shall this bill be passed and declared as a bylaw? Recorded vote.
Councillor Perruzza, please. Councillor McMahon, Councillor Wong-Tam, Councillor Davis. Councillor Perks, please.
Councillor Cole, please.
The motion to enact the confirming bill carries unanimously, 35 in favor.
Okay, we'll recess to tomorrow morning at 9:30. Thank you, members of council and staff.